Chapter 26. Combined Training. Grey Wolf is now also in a state of disgrace. He is only a half-grown wolf cub. How can he be responsible for luring wild boars? Is it wrong to run fast? Should he be used as bait if he runs fast? Haven't you seen how big and strong wild boars are? If they just push against him, he will break his bones. But that damn group of people, including the master Feng Jian, agreed to this plan. Who can tell him why wild boars are so strong and can run so fast? It's so unfair. Once again, he used the emergency brake to shake off the wild boar's intimate kiss. He did not dare to slow down at all and continued to run wildly. Location number 3 was not far away. It usually took only a little over a minute. Now he had to run against time. Relying on its strong body, the wild boar rushed forward like a raging tank. In its eyes, all the obstacles along the way could not stop its strong body. Location 3 was right in front of him. Grey Wolf gathered up his last bit of strength, concentrated all his chakra, and drove his body to burst out at the fastest speed. He looked at the mark, exerted force on his hind legs, and flew into the air, leaping over the marked location. With the blessing of chakra, the half-grown wolf body seemed extremely agile and swift. The wild boar doesn't care about all that. If you offend me, I will push you to death. You can jump as much as you want. If I fail to push you, I lose. What's the use of jumping high? Look, I'm going to knock you down with my mouth and you won't have anywhere to escape. The wild boar had limited jumping ability, so it could only charge forward with its head down. Suddenly, its front legs stumbled, and the front half of its body fell down suddenly. The other half of its body still had the inertia of charging forward, but now this inertia could not help it charge forward, and it rushed down instead. Because of the falling front half of its body did a somersault in the air, and then fell heavily into the pit. The wild boar weighing several hundred kilograms flew into the air, and then collided head-on with the wooden stake with exposed spikes. The wild boar's shrill scream shocked the whole area and startled a flock of birds. He tried to struggle, but the wooden thorns had already pierced his body deeply, holding it tightly. Every movement brought waves of severe pain. The wild boar was doomed. Feng Jian put away the bow and arrow. It was okay. The plan was perfect and he didn't use his last insurance. Feng Jian and the spirit beast watched the wild boars struggle in the pit without feeling uncomfortable. The 3 wolf cubs were already thinking about which part of the pig to eat. The pig's ear didn't count, because it didn't have much meat and was just an appetizer. Who of you will give him the final blow? Feng Jian said, still training the summoned beast's finishing ability. Sooner or later, they will go to the battlefield, and they must have a way to kill. The best performance was Claw Taro, with his iron claws, clean and neat. But it was not his turn to take action today. Kaiba Taro was also good, and he was very good at using crossbows. If one arrow didn't work, he would shoot another one. The 3.5 wolves looked at each other, not knowing what to do. In fact, their killing power was really limited. Their wolf fangs were just open, which could eat meat, but they would be useless if they bit through the wild boar's skin. The key point was that the wild boar was not dead yet, so it was impossible for it to be so obedient and let them bite it. Finally, Big Bad Wolf stood up. Although he didn't know how to kill the wild boar, as the big brother of the other 2, he had to stand up. Feng Jian could see their helplessness. How much killing power could be expected from half-grown wolf cubs? However, they had to practice the necessary means. It was okay not to have them for the time being, but they must never give up practicing. Bite with your mouth, tear with your claws, it's up to you. You must learn to kill your target. The wolf cubs don't have to worry about food, and they have helpers when hunting, resulting in the 3 wolf cubs not having much of the wildness of wolves. You 3 come together. Feng Jian was too lazy to talk nonsense. The 3 of them were Karami, so how long could they delay? The wolf cub had no choice but to dig down the pit and remove the unused wooden thorns around it, otherwise it would easily hurt itself. Then he started to practice his teeth on the pig's butt. The fat and strong pig's butt was hung with 3 wolf cubs, and the wild boar was left with only a grunt. The scene was very warm, without any bloody smell of slaughter. Feng Jian sat down cross-legged and instructed the 3 wolf cubs, concentrate the chakra on the teeth and front paws to increase the power. You have practiced these before, so use them. It has been a long time since the chakra was awakened. Feng Jian dared not fall behind in the basic chakra control. When I read the original work in my previous life, I discussed the issue of chakra control. Feng Jian believed that chakra control was the same as physical skills. As long as you put in effort and sweat, you can improve your ability. Maybe everyone's starting point is different, but as long as you put in the effort, you will gain something. Didn't Naruto, whose chakra control ability was so poor that he couldn't even use the three-body technique, also learn the Raise Nan, which requires advanced chakra control skills? This is proof. Now the little ones can't do it. Feng Jian is not worried. Physical skills and chakra control are basic abilities suitable for a lifetime of study, which require time to accumulate. Just like now, if you can't do it once, twice, you can always learn it by trying a few more times. Grey Wolf didn't wait for Feng Jian's further instructions, so he could only bite the bullet and try. It was easier than he thought. It would be better if there was no chakra surge when he retreated. There was no other way. The wolf had 4 legs, and Grey Wolf was used to using all 4 legs together. The front claw with chakra attached scratched the pig's butt, and except for the pig's voice rising a little, the pig's butt was intact. Continue. Obviously, Grey Wolf's chakra is still too low level. In addition to increasing the strength of his front paws, it did not increase the sharpness of his claws. This cannot be taught, so he can only try it himself. Shhh. Tear ah. The sound of claws scratching the pig's skin and the wild boar's screams of pain continued until the wild boar could no longer withstand the severe injuries and died completely. The pig's butt was already tattered and unbearable to look at. I have to say, Kazama's training was real and bloody enough. Kazama jumped down the pit, took out the scroll and packed the wild boar. It was too late to clean up here, and it might attract other ferocious beasts, so he just took it back to the tree house to clean up. The 3 wolf cubs' front paws and mouths were all swollen. They used too much force, which caused some damage to their claws and teeth. But it didn't matter. They would recover after a good sleep. No medicine was needed. Every furry child would scratch or bite a few pairs of shoes during adolescence. Feng Jian gave them some practice in advance to prevent them from scratching things in the future. Hunting is not only a money-making business for Feng Jian, it has also become a training for the summoned beasts, and the forest is their training ground. Today's training is to catch fish, standing on the water to catch fish, climbing trees. This level, I didn't practice much. Feng Jian is already familiar with it, so in this case, practice treading water. The summoning beast is also practiced. In the future, the battle will be either on land or on the water. This is a necessary lesson. Climbing a tree is easy, and treading water is not difficult for Feng Jian once he gets used to it. The difficult part is the spirit beasts, as human experience may not necessarily apply to them. Feng Jian can only listen to his training experience, and they have to figure out the rest on their own. Chapter 27. The days slipped away quietly in the fulfilling and orderly training. In the blink of an eye, Kazama was already 12 years old, and tomorrow would be the last day of his ninja school career. That's right, Kazama is graduating. Today, Feng Jian did not train, but took a bath and changed his clothes solemnly, then sat in meditation. The ninja career that he had been thinking about was about to begin, and Feng Jian's heart could not help but beat faster. This feeling of anticipation made it difficult for him to calm down and practice. He might as well give himself a day off. It happened to be a good opportunity to think about his ninja career. Perhaps for other ninja school students, becoming a ninja means being superior to others, strength, money, status, etc. Kazama is a veteran, or his experience of time travel, the cultural collision between the two worlds, makes Kazama look at problems from a different perspective. Kazama, who has read the original work, knows that the world of Naruto is a world full of sadness and darkness. War, killing, hunger, disease, natural disasters, man-made disasters, etc. Even if the 5 major ninja villages seem to be peacefully ruled, in Kazama's view, it is just the tranquility before the war, just like a few people fighting, taking a break when they are tired, and then continuing to fight after resting. This world, like a chaotic world, people are worse than dogs. Ninja, a tool of killing, he will also step into this profession tomorrow. I don't know if he will regret this decision in the future. Kazama always considered himself an ordinary person, even though he had learned the mainstream power of this world, ninjutsu, and became the synonym of strength in this world, ninja. All of this, Kazama did for survival. If possible, he wanted to live a better, freer and more comfortable life. So he chose bow and arrow as his main weapon, and didn't have to fight with people in close combat. If he was happy, he could shoot 2 arrows, and if he was unhappy, he could turn around and run away in time. This was the most real thought that Kazama never said out loud. If possible, he would rather find an ordinary job, earn a salary that can support a family, and live out his life. Unfortunately, this is the ninja world, where even cage-level strongmen dare not say they can live to the next year. It turns out that the life of lying flat in the previous life is what he longs for the most. Now he has learned ninjutsu, earth clone, water clone, instant body technique, and Kazama can release them with one seal, comparable to experienced elite ninjas. Life-saving ninjutsu must be mastered, no discussion. Why not learn other offensive ninjutsu? First of all, energy is limited. It is not enough to just know ninjutsu, but it must be able to really help win in battle. In battle, the jonins usually use the most familiar ninjutsu. The third generation is known as the ninjutsu doctor and knows thousands of ninjutsu. He is the most versatile, but aren't he still using fire escape and earth escape? Kakashi is the same, and he usually uses lightning escape and earth escape. In the final analysis, it is better to master one move than to master 1,000 moves. Ninja is a killing profession, and the best solution is to kill the opponent as quickly as possible. Why play tricks? If you want to master ninjutsu to the point of mastering one move, you must rely on time to hone it. Kazama has so much time, so of course he chooses the one that suits him best. It's not that lethal ninjutsu is bad, but it's not suitable for Kazama's fighting style. Kazama's long-range attack bow and arrow has a longer range than most ninjutsu. Should he give up archery to release ninjutsu? This doesn't conform to Kazama's original intention of playing long range. Long range is all about pulling and controlling the distance. Let me stop and release ninjutsu with you head-on. Using my own weakness to attack the enemy's strength is not a wise choice. I didn't learn any proper ninjutsu for wind escape, it was mainly attached to bows and arrows and blades, it was quite powerful. I will develop some wind escape ninjutsu suitable for bows and arrows later. The proper wind escape was not up to the requirements, so I gave up. And Kazama's talent was not in wind escape, it would be more effective to practice hard, time was precious, I couldn't waste it. Sensing ninjutsu, in addition to the ninjutsu taught by the old man that senses through ground vibrations, Feng Jian practiced it, but it didn't feel good. Sensing the direction of the enemy by sensing the vibrations of the earth, this kind of perception is too vague, so he practiced it for a while and gave up. But it gave Feng Jian another inspiration. If he can sense vibrations, then can he also sense water? That's right, sense water, water sensing technique, the incompetent Feng Jian named it. This time he gave it a nice name, rain watching technique. Just look at the name and you will know that you don't need to sense people, you only need to sense water. As long as there are living things, there is water, and the water content of the human body accounts for 70%, which is a very mysterious ratio. The closer the perceived water is to this ratio, the more likely it is an enemy. Developing this perception technique consumed the energy and time of the boss Feng Jian. There was no other way, he had to do it, because Feng Jian found that the earth sensing technique had a flaw. The enemy was sensed through vibrations, but what if the enemy did not move and did not produce vibrations? Feng Jian encountered a tribe of lizards who were good at lurking in the forest. He was originally going to help Taro to explore the bottom line of the lizard tribe, but he was almost killed by the lizards. If it weren't for the three wolves' keen sense of smell, he would have almost admitted defeat. This kind of enemy who is motionless, silently waiting for the enemy to approach, and then launches a surprise attack, is naturally resistant to the earth sensing technique. Don't think that there is no such method in the ninja world. Since Feng Jian does not want to engage in close combat, long-distance perception is a course that must be mastered. Otherwise, how to lock the enemy and how to avoid the enemy. As long as there is this flaw in the earth sense technique, Kazama cannot be at ease. Even if he is right 100 times, if he makes a mistake once in a battle, it could mean the difference between life and death. Kazama dare not take the risk. The water perception technique is to make up for the deficiency of the earth perception technique. The two perception techniques complement each other. With the all-round and three-dimensional perception, the enemy has nowhere to hide. This can really make Feng Jian feel at ease. It's tiring to talk about it. If I had the Kagura mind of my clan, why would I need to be so cumbersome? Isn't it? If the quality is not enough, the quantity will make up for it. There are also a group of ninja beasts that can be summoned at any time for group fights. Sword and archery are compulsory courses every day. With such strength, he should be able to survive at the genin level. Right? Kazama heard a very scary statistic. Even in a powerful country like Konoha, the mortality rate of graduating genin every year is about 30%. In other words, nearly one-third of genin, or genin who just graduated from the ninja school, died on missions every year. Damn, just based on this statistic, Kazama was so scared that he almost gave up the ninja career. Feng Jian believes that the biggest reason why the old man is alone is that his 50-year ninja career is too long, which has exhausted all his luck. Even the son of the third Hokage died in the mission, but the old man has been a ninja for 50 years and is still alive and kicking. All his luck lies in survival. Feng Jian decided to learn from the old man and be a genin for life. With the strength of a jonin and the mission of a genin, the old man accidentally learned the true teachings of Go-Yudeo. Chapter 28. Graduation. Yesterday, I let my thoughts run wild, thinking about everything I could and couldn't think about. Today, as soon as I stepped out of the tree house, I would no longer be confused. Konoha Village, Ninja School, graduating class. There were 30 to 40 students sitting in the classroom. Don't think it's too few. There were 50 to 60 students in a class. But as the ninja school curriculum progressed, some people gradually fell behind and were expelled. Those who stayed were those who had gone through 6 years of training at the ninja school and persisted. They were about to graduate. After the class division today, they were legitimate genin wearing ninja forehead protectors. Okay, be quiet. The teacher on the podium obviously had no patience. He slapped the wooden podium, making a loud clacking sound, suppressing the buzzing sound from the audience. Next, the people whose names I read will go into groups of 3 and go to the next class and wait for the instructor to pick them up. Passerby A, Passerby B, Passerby C. Inu Sawano, Watanabe Kumaro, Yamaguchi Yashiki. There were more than 30 people in the classroom, that is, more than a dozen classes. As the teacher kept talking, the number of people in the classroom became smaller and smaller. Feng Jian's expectations became stronger and stronger. Who would his teammates be? He hoped that they would be people he knew. If not, it would be fine if he didn't know them. He just wanted them to have a good personality and not be too bad. Otherwise, it would be hard to educate them again. Okay, those are all the groups. As for Maraboshi Kazima, you are not grouped yet. Someone will take you to meet your teammates later. You can go wait next door. The teacher left after he finished reading, without looking back. Feng Jian was confused. What was going on? Were they treating me differently? Were they targeting me? Did I offend someone? There was no reason. I was very low-key in the class. Except for occasionally using my iron fist to punish those who were mean and nagging, I didn't offend any adults. Their class was just a class for common people. The class next door was a class for geniuses. There weren't any children from big families. How come I was the only one left? One person per team? That's not impossible. Kazama couldn't figure it out, so he simply gave up thinking about it. Anyway, even if there was only one person, the mission of a genin could be done. The waiting time is the most torturous. Feng Jian hates making people wait, and he hates waiting for others even more. Finally, when Feng Jian was about to fall asleep and was talking to the desk in a friendly manner, a man with a sword and a scar on the corner of his mouth walked into the classroom with a serious face. He ignored the students' gazes and said, "Who is Maraboshi Feng Jian? Come out and follow me." Feng Jian, who was feeling sleepy, suddenly heard his name being called. He woke up immediately and saw the neat and tidy ninja on the podium. The ninja on the podium didn't get an answer, so he asked again, "No one?" It seemed that the information in the classroom was inconsistent with his expectations. "I am Maraboshi Kazama." Kazama stood up quickly, not daring to keep the great god who was about to lead him waiting. Kazama recognized that this neat ninja was the teammate of the old man in the plot, Byun Zaojian, who was good at wind escape and swordsmanship, and had a vacuum sword with amazing power. He could face the dozens of people in the Rock Village troops head-on, leaving the chance to escape to the genin Maraboshi Kasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. He was an elite jonin with strong strength and character. Zaojian Byun was a very traditional ninja, but Feng Jian's appearance at this time disappointed him a little. His face was full of sleep marks and his reaction was slow. This was not the appearance of a ninja. However, he was calm and would not judge people by their first impression. He suppressed his disappointment and turned away. "Come with me, I'll take you to meet your teammates." The atmosphere between the two taciturn people often inadvertently turned into the current awkward situation. Fortunately, they arrived at their destination soon. In order to prevent wild animals from attacking villagers, Konoha put up a barbed wire fence at the border of the village and divided the area into several areas, which were numbered and used as training grounds. Feng Jian had only seen it from the outside and had never been inside, because it was only for registered ninjas. There were some training tools and traps inside, which were very dangerous to ordinary people. Under the leadership of Baiun Zhejian, Feng Jian came here and entered a training ground. Feng Jian saw the number 6 written on the door, which was the 6th training ground. He came directly to the training ground. It seems that Baiun Zhejian is not only neat in his clothes, but also in his personality. Is he going to start the assessment right away? The 6th training ground should be a less popular training ground, because apart from a large area of grass bordering the forest, there are no signs of human activity, which means there are few people here. The two entered the training ground and saw 2 figures waiting. The 2 people waiting naturally saw the 2 people entering the training ground. The girl on the left was the first to speak. "Morning teacher, you are so slow." The other tall young man smiled slightly as a greeting. "Okay, everyone is here. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Zhao Jian Baiun, an elite jonin of Konoha. I'm good at wind escape and swordsmanship. I like to practice and hate lazy people. You can introduce yourselves as well." Zhao Jian Baiun crossed his arms across his chest and glanced at Kazama while speaking. Among the 3, he was least optimistic about Kazama because of the first impression. "I'll go first. My name is Mizutani Nobuko. I like powerful ninjutsu, hate being laughed at, and want to be a strong and independent ninja." The girl was very generous. Even though she was a little embarrassed, her self-introduction was great. A cheerful girl should be easy to get along with. "My name is Ryaz Ichiro. I'm good at physical skills, I like strong teammates and I hate losing teammates. If possible, I want to become an indispensable member of the team." The silly voice and unconfident tone made the big boy look a little silly. Kazama didn't mean to dislike him. How could he be a fool if he could become a ninja? At most, he was just as stubborn as Naruto. "My name is Maribashi Kazama. I'm good at swordsmanship, archery. I like hunting and then sharing it with my friends. There's nothing I hate, but I hate people with bad tempers and arrogance." Kazama's self-introduction was quite standard. Only when Kazama mentioned that he was good at swordsmanship did Baiun Zhao's eyes flicker. "That's all for today. This is the first time you've met, so get familiar with each other first. Tomorrow you'll take a wilderness survival test. Only if you pass my test can you become a member of my 6th class. If you fail, you'll have to go back to school and retake it. Do you understand?" "Understood." As soon as the words disband were spoken, only a burst of white mist was left on the spot. Bai Yun had already left with the teleportation technique in the morning, leaving the 3 people looking at each other in bewilderment. "Well, Mizutani Nobuko wanted to say something, but she was a little nervous. She looked at Raizawa Ichiro, but unfortunately Raizawa Ichiro didn't understand what she meant. She could only stomp her feet on the spot, grit her teeth, and looked at Feng Jian with a serious face. "You should have heard of us, right?" Feng Jian was confused, thinking that he was ignorant. These 2 were celebrities. Feng Jian spent most of his time in the forest and treehouse except for classes. He could not hang out with other classmates, so he did not care about their gossip. He really did not know what level of masters these 2 were. "Should I know you?" Feng Jian's tone was a little weak. He was shallow in knowledge and always spoke in a weak voice. Mizutani Nobuko and Raizawa Ichiro looked at each other in silence, then spoke again. "Forget it, if you don't know, then you don't know. But since we may become teammates in the future, Ichiro and I still think it's better not to hide it from you." Chapter 29. The Unlucky Group of 2. The 2 looked unhappy. Kazama's complete ignorance made their situation even more difficult. They had thought that since Kazama had come here with the Jonin, he would be mentally prepared and the subsequent persuasion would be easier. But they met a guy like Kazama who didn't play by the rules at all. There is nothing that cannot be said. If you have a clear conscience, you might as well speak out. Today is the first time I meet you, and we may have to be teammates for a long time in the future. It is good to communicate more. He sat down and even took out tea and cakes for the picnic, ready to have a long talk. After another long silence, Nobuko Mizutani seemed to be mentally prepared and began to talk about how they had been called the unlucky duo over the past year. "We have actually graduated for a year. After graduation, Ichiro Raizawa and I, as well as another teammate, were assigned to the same class. Our team leader was an elite chunin. Our ninja careers seemed to have started so simply. Who knew that on our first mission, we would encounter a traitorous ninja? Sensei Yamaguchi bought time for us and asked us to run first. In order not to be caught up by the enemy, we fled separately. In the end, only we came back. Sensei Yamaguchi and Shinichi were missing. When we found them, they were already. Mizutani Nobuko couldn't go on. Tears kept coming out of her eyes. Ichiro Raizawa also had a sad face and didn't know how to comfort his teammates. After crying for a while, the sadness subsided a little, and Nobuko continued, because of the death of the teacher and Shinichi, our team had to disband, and the village did not arrange a teacher to lead the team. Ichiro and I could not take any missions until a few days ago, when we suddenly received a notice saying that the existence had sent new teammates and teachers. We were full of expectations, but worried that you and the teacher would dislike us. Over the past year, the news that Ichiro and I sacrificed our teammates and teachers in the novice mission was widely spread. Many people laughed at us for being the unlucky duo, and that anyone who teamed up with us would fail in the mission and their teammates would be sacrificed. The two lowered their heads sadly, and their voices became lower and lower. Is this the origin of the unlucky duo? Feng Jian was very calm. This story was not touching. In other words, in the world of Naruto, such things happen from time to time. The only difference is whether the protagonist is himself or not. The two didn't know how to answer because Feng Jian's question and tone were too calm. If so, then you don't have to worry. When you become a ninja, you have to be prepared to make sacrifices. I don't think your teacher and teammates have ever blamed you. As for my opinion, the unlucky duo was imposed on you by others. Encountering a traitorous ninja is unpredictable and has nothing to do with you. Don't worry about this matter. I have any prejudice against you. He drank a cup of tea leisurely, and continued, what worries me more is whether you have slacked off during this 1-year gap. His tone was a bit harsh. In fact, Feng Jian just wanted to understand the strength of his teammates. He took advantage of this point in time when the two teammates were still in a daze and wanted to find out the bottom line first. Of course we are training, but we don't have a teacher to guide us. The training content is also what we learned in school, so our progress is limited. At this point, the two men's voices weakened again. Then let me see your training. You graduated from the ninja school, and so did I. I think I can still see the difference between us. Kazama acted as if he was going to interview someone, and he was even playing the role of an interviewer. That's good. Nobuko always speaks on behalf of Ichiro, and Ichiro is responsible for agreeing with her. First, the throwing technique. Zenza started first. She drew a few circles on the tree trunk 10 steps away, which was the target. With a kunao in her left hand and a shuriken in her right hand, she drew an X-shaped pattern in front of her. The air was broken with a swoosh sound, and the target in the distance was filled with hidden weapons. Seeing that all the hidden weapons she threw hit the target, Zenza breathed a sigh of relief. Although throwing was a basic skill that she practiced every day, she was still a little nervous as if it was a test. Kazama's evaluation is standard, just like the standard in a textbook. He practiced the throwing technique stroke by stroke almost according to the textbook. It can be seen that he worked hard, but unfortunately the direction is a bit wrong. No matter how hard he worked, it is useless. How can the throwing technique be so standard as a basic ability? The standard is set for beginners to facilitate learning and guidance. It's a bit ridiculous that he is still so rigid after graduating from the ninja school. He is obviously a beginner. The throwing technique used in the battlefield is either concealed, fierce, or casual. It is definitely not standard. Otherwise, as soon as you show your posture, you will know what move you are using. Isn't this giving intelligence to the opponent? Kazama didn't say anything, but just signaled Rise Ichiro to continue. The big guy Raizawa Ichiro's throwing skills were much more violent. The dagger-sized kunao in his hand was like a small knife, and the shuriken was like a tin toy. He swung his arm and threw the hidden weapon in his hand. The sound of breaking through the air turned into a whistle. The targets in the distance were hit hard one after another. The last few kunao hit the target, knocking down many of Nobuko's hidden weapons. Almost every sharp part of the hidden weapon was deeply embedded in the tree trunk. After throwing the hidden weapon, he embarrassedly apologized to Nobuko for knocking her hidden weapon away. This person's evaluation, it is practical but not flashy, it is not good looking, but it can be regarded as a very useful method, which highlights the miracle of great strength. Few people dare to catch the hidden weapon thrown out by this throwing technique. Okay, Ichiro's throwing skills are quite powerful, but the speed of swinging his arms could be faster in the early stage. Feng Jian applauded and encouraged this honest big guy. People with such honest personalities need more encouragement. This caused Ichiro to laugh silently, rubbing the back of his head. Next is physical skills. I will be your opponent. Who will go first? Feng Jian personally took part in the competition. This is the most direct way. You can tell whether a person's physical skills are good or not as soon as you start. I'll do it. It's still Nobuko. This young lady is very strong-willed. The two sides made the seal of opposition, and Feng Jian took a stance, signaling the young lady to attack first. Sure enough, it was the same taste, textbook-like punches and kicks, with average power, but good speed. The two of them went back and forth for more than 10 rounds, and the young lady had exhausted all her tricks. Speaking of the physical skills of the ninja world, apart from the exaggerated moves of Emperor Kai, there seems to be no real ancient martial arts. Feng Jian thought about copying the unique skills of his ancestors, but in the end, because the martial arts he learned were just a fancy trick, he had to give up. Martial arts are more suitable for performance. The realm of training muscles, bones and skin outside and training breath inside can only be thought of with drooling. Soon, the young lady who had been in the attacking state gradually consumed her energy and her movements became less agile, so Feng Jian called a stop in time. The big guy Ichiro didn't take action immediately, but Feng Jian had to pay attention. This guy was probably only 1 year older than Feng Jian, a head taller, with visible tendon muscles all over his body, strong but not bloated. Chapter 30. Come on. Feng Jian rested for a while, replenished his consumed energy, and accepted Ichiro's challenge again. As soon as they started fighting, the huge resistance caused by the collision of their arms forced Kazama to give up the hard-on method he used when facing Nobuko. He used more methods of dodging, pulling, and keeping a distance. Unexpectedly, this made Ichiro even more excited. Over the past year or so, he and Nobuko had been neglected. Even though he was an honest person, he was very sad to suffer so much criticism. Nobuko could still complain to him, but he was not good at speaking and kept it to himself. He could only use physical skills to vent his depression. When he was exhausted and tired, he would fall down and sleep, and he would not feel sad. This was his way of dealing with injuries, forgetting the sadness. Today's fight with Kazama made him feel different. Kazama's defense was better than his offense, which was good for him to understand his teammates' strength. But for the lonely Ichiro, this was a good opponent. Not only could he withstand his punches, but he could also hold on for such a long time, and sometimes he could even take a few hits from him. He was an equally matched opponent. Thinking of this, Ichiro was extremely excited, and his fists swung quickly, like a lonely kid who suddenly found a playmate. Wouldn't he be excited? As for Kazama, he was in trouble. It's not that he had never been beaten before. He had fought with his classmates many times during school, but he had never been as frustrated as today. Even when facing old man Guja, at least he would not be so aggressive and would stop when he got the point. Ichiro, who was in high spirits, didn't care about so much. He just killed to his heart's content first. Zai Feng had no choice but to use a surge of chakra in his hands. His hands were wrapped in water attribute chakra, which had a blocking effect on collisions to a certain extent. Of course, this was not Feng Jian's purpose. Ever since he knew through practice that water was one of his innate attributes, how could Feng Jian not think about the changes in the properties of water? The most common water pressure, impact, and flow are too common. To have enough power, there must be sufficient chakra supply. Count the ninjas who rely on water escape in the original work, one is the second generation, and one is Hoshigaki Kisame. Which one is not at the level of Shitanla? Feng Jian himself asked if he had the chakra talent. So it is necessary to try some different water escape. Counting the water escape in the original work, there are two people who make Feng Jian very interested. One is the water escape technique of the duo who opened the door. The nature of the technique is that it can make water as sticky as glue, and it can stick Naruto to the ground like a mouse. It's interesting to think about it. The other is a special water escape technique that can condense the water escape technique in the air into a magnifying glass, focus the sunlight into light spots, burn the enemy, and allow oneself to move in the air. This is very nice, and Kazama wants both of them. So far, Kazama has only learned one, which is to turn ordinary water into sticky glue, and he has not even learned the matching water escape technique. Water escape technique, because it needs to be released at medium and short range, which does not conform to Kazama's idea of long-range defense against enemies. Now it is very suitable to deal with the crazy bull. After several collisions, a lot of semi-liquid things like maltose appeared on Ichiro's body. This thing is very sticky. Under the limitation of stickiness, Ichiro's strength gradually became difficult to move. In addition, Feng Jian kept releasing this water erosion, almost entangled Ichiro into a ball. From a distance, Ichiro looked like amber with only the head left outside, which was funny. Ichiro struggled for a long time, but he became more and more sticky and gave up struggling. Ichiro, I have to say that your taijutsu is very good, but your adaptability is a little poor. As he said that, Kazama came into contact with the nature of the water jutsu, and the water jutsu that stuck to Ichiro turned into water and melted away. Ichiro quickly got up. The feeling of being wrapped up, unable to tear open, unable to pull off, and getting tighter and tighter was really uncomfortable. When Nobuko saw Ichiro being praised again, she felt even more depressed because he had never been praised before. Finally, it's ninjutsu. Let me see your ninjutsu. Any ninjutsu will do, there is no limit to the type. The close combat with Ichiro was Kazama's biggest failure of the day. When he wakes up tomorrow morning, there will definitely be a lot of bruises on his body. In terms of ninjutsu, Nobuko was considered confident because the person she was comparing herself to was Ichiro. He took a deep breath and quickly formed seals with his hands. The simple clone technique was completed almost instantly. Puff puff puff, more than a dozen clones appeared behind Nobuko, and each one was exactly the same. Then came the transformation technique. The clone and Nobuko herself transformed into Kazama, which was equally wonderful. The last one was the substitution technique. Nobuko completed the 5 seals in 1 second and exchanged with the tree stump not far away. Kazama's evaluation, very good, with fast hand seal formation and stable release. Except for the ninjutsu being too simple, there is no other problem. This skill would definitely get high scores among the graduates. It's a pity that they have graduated for a year and this level is unacceptable. It's ultimately because they lack a teacher. Not bad, Kazama gave a not too bad evaluation. Nobuko felt relieved, but when she saw Ichiro coming forward, she became worried again. Ichiro's ninjutsu was the worst, and he was almost at the bottom of the class. He graduated with this score line. I'm not good at ninjutsu. Ichiro grumbled for a long time, and said this. Feng Jian was worried for him, but he forced himself to hold it in. Don't be impatient in front of an honest person. If you are impatient, he will be even more impatient, and you will get half the result with twice the effort. It's okay, use everything you know and can use. There are only 3 of us here, no one will laugh at you. Feng Jian still encouraged Ichiro. If he could graduate, he would at least not be like Rock Lee who couldn't use ninjutsu at all. If he could graduate, it meant that he had passed the 3-body technique. Sure enough, the clone technique, split into 4, the transformation technique was so-so, and the substitution technique used a scarecrow, the lowest level of substitution technique, but fortunately it can be released, so graduation is justified. Here I need to explain why the substitution technique using a scarecrow is the lowest level. The substitution technique is a ninjutsu that requires the preparation of substitute props in advance. The closer the prop is to the releaser, the easier it is to release. This closeness is not just about distance, but also about shape. For example, the scarecrow is shaped like a human and is close to the releaser, so it is easy to release and suitable for beginners. A slightly more advanced one is like Nobuko, who uses wooden stakes, branches, or even small animals. At a higher level, it is leaves, kunao, and the like. For example, the elite ninja Byun Zaejian, who Kazama met today, has an outstanding leaf substitution technique. This is the representative of advanced substitution techniques. Nobuko and Ichiro finished their performances and silently waited for Kazama's verdict. Kazama didn't know that Nobuko had been waiting for a teammate for a year. With teammates and teachers, they could take on missions, become stronger, and continue their ninja career. If Kazama refused to team up with them, then they would either quit the ninja ranks and become ordinary people, or continue to train as a genin like old man Kasuke. No matter which path they took, it was almost a death sentence for them. This was also the reason why they were older than Kazama but acted more nervous than him. Chapter 31. Well, I can see your efforts, but you are working in the wrong direction, so most of your efforts are actually a waste of time." Feng Jian's words instantly hit the two of them hard. The two of them were feeling lost now, as if they had been looking forward to good luck for a year, and it was suddenly cancelled today. Kazama's comment was like a bolt from the blue. Nobuko tried hard to hold back her tears, and Ichiro smiled bitterly, and put his big hand on Nobuko's petite shoulder to comfort her. "But, I like hard-working teammates. It doesn't matter if you go in the wrong direction. At most, you are at the same starting point as me. I just graduated. To be honest, when I heard you say that you have graduated for a year, I was afraid that you are much better than me and I would hold you back." Feng Jian panted heavily when he spoke. As soon as this sentence came out, the atmosphere suddenly turned from a storm to a sunny day. "You mean, do you accept us as your teammates?" Nobuko asked in disbelief. God knows how much he had waited for this day. Ichiro was already confused. His brain needed to digest the sudden good news. Why not? Feng Jian felt that the two had been marginalized for too long. They were supposed to form a team with the two of them, right? How come it seemed like Feng Jian was choosing his teammates? He was not the team leader, and he had no right to refuse. In fact, the two felt weak because of the rumors, and Feng Jian acted much stronger than them, which led to psychological inequality between the two sides. Great! All the gloom in Zinz's heart disappeared, and he jumped up and down on the spot, as if this was not enough to express the joy in his heart. "Dallin, let's have a barbecue to celebrate today," Zinza suggested. But when Dallin mentioned this, his expression turned cloudy again. "Because they didn't have much money. How about we go to my place? I have a lot of ingredients there. Let's make some ourselves." Feng Jian saw Dallin's dilemma. Normally, graduating from the ninja school means becoming a ninja, but these two people became ninjas but lost their teammates and their mentors. They couldn't take on missions and couldn't make money. They wanted to eat well without money. They were dreaming. They didn't starve to death, which was considered good housekeeping. In the tree house, when Feng Jian took out various ingredients and mountain products to stew a pot of delicious mushroom soup, Xinzi and Delang had already lost interest in talking. When Feng Jian called his spirit beasts to go into the forest and bring back a wild deer, the two were already numb. Is this teammate of theirs so good at living? In the end, the wild deer was saved by Xinzi. 3 people, eating a wild deer, it was too luxurious. Feng Jian agreed obediently. He felt it was a bit strange. The Konoha forest was very large, so it was normal to have some wild deer. Feng Jian had seen them from a distance, but he had never caught one. This little thing was really alert and hard to get close to. How did this group of summoned beasts catch it? Looking at this wild deer, it was not afraid of people at all and its body was clean. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. Could the 5 little ones have gone to the Nara family's ranch to hunt? They hadn't been watching for a whole morning, so they got into trouble? Or did the wild deer run away on its own? But who could tell? Never mind, let's do this for now. Mushroom soup, grilled fish, and a big pot of rice. It's not exquisite, but it's enough to fill my stomach. Nobuko and Ichiro wolfed down their food, and their table manners were very bad. It's not their fault. From the conversation, I learned that these two were also orphans. The good thing is that their parents are real people from Konoha village, and their family backgrounds are very clean. Their parents died while they were in school, so there was a small inheritance that enabled them to finish ninja school without being sent to an orphanage. Since graduating this year, there have been no missions and the inheritance has been spent. Because they are registered ninjas, they cannot receive orphan subsidies. They have no source of income and rely entirely on the superficial ninja knowledge they learned from the ninja school to barely fill their stomachs. It's rare to see ninjas who are so miserable. Ichiro is back to full health, ah. After eating, Ichiro's mood was obviously high and he talked more. He didn't like to talk, not only because he often couldn't express himself clearly, but also because of other people's ridicule. There were no outsiders in the treehouse and Kazama and Nobuko would not laugh at him, so he let down his guard. Yes, you can carry out the mission tomorrow in exchange for commission. Zinza nodded in response. The words they said were completely unrelated, but it was indeed a response that they had long been accustomed to each other. Maybe not, Feng Jian couldn't help but say, pouring cold water on him as soon as he opened his mouth. I heard that every teacher in charge will assess the members before carrying out the mission. If they pass, they will lead the class, and if they fail, they will be sent back to the ninja school to retake the course. Didn't you have the assessment in the first place? Feng Jian was also surprised. From their tone, it seemed that they didn't know about this. Yeah, there's an assessment. As expected, Nobuko didn't know about this, and Ichiro shook his head. Could it be that this was arranged by the teacher himself? Speaking of which, the assessments of the 12 little strong men seemed to be different. After carefully recalling the original work, I reluctantly came to this conclusion. Is it true that we have to go back to the ninja school to retake the course? Nobuko couldn't believe it. They had already been delayed for a year. If they were sent back to retake the course, they would have to graduate with classmates who were 3 years younger than them. Thinking of this, Nobuko felt hopeless. She absolutely could not retake the course. Ichiro, you must not rebuild it, otherwise you will die. Nobuko pulled Ichiro's arm and shook it madly. Ichiro staggered and nodded in agreement. He didn't understand what was going on yet. He needed some time to think about such a serious problem. Seeing that Ichiro was slow to react, Nobuko turned to Kazama again. Kazama, you don't want to retake the course, is there any way to pass the test? Looking at Nobuko, who clasped her hands together and closed her eyes to beg, Feng Jian gave a thumbs up to his acting skills. Not bad, deep and heartfelt, worthy of encouragement. As far as I know, the so-called assessment is actually a survival exercise. It is very likely that the team leader will personally go down and do it with us to understand our strength and character. As for the assessment criteria for substitute teachers? I don't know about that. Different people have different requirements. Some people look at the basics, some look at talent, and some look at team chemistry. Hey? Is it that complicated? Then how are we going to do it? Beat the teacher. Feng Jian curled his lips and said, you really dare to think so? 3 newly graduated genin want to defeat the elite jonin. Do they think too highly of themselves, or do they look down on the elite jonin of Konoha? Don't even think about defeating the substitute teacher. Think about the teachers in the ninja school. Can you beat them? You can't. Our team leader is an elite jonin. He can beat more than 10 jonin teachers in the ninja school. There is no way to describe how powerful a jonin is. We can only use the ninja school teachers as a unit of measurement. This is a way that the 2 companions can understand. Wow, then aren't we definitely eliminated? That's not the case. If we are eliminated after losing to a substitute jonin teacher, then students of the ninja school should forget about becoming ninjas. I think it should be through our confrontation with the teacher that the teacher can see our strength and talent clearly and think that we have some qualities that the teacher can appreciate. If we meet these 2 points, we can pass the assessment even if we lose. I see. So what should we do? I think we should fight against the teacher. The teacher is so powerful. He can defeat us with just one ninjutsu. Chapter 32. Survival Exercise. Little girl, you think too much. No need for ninjutsu, 1 punch from each person will make them fall to the ground, so, we have to perform as well as possible and not be defeated by the teacher in 1 move. The longer we can hold out, the better. If we can make the teacher win in an ugly way and cause some trouble for the teacher, that would be the best. So, use whatever means you have, don't be afraid of hurting the teacher. An elite jonin can't be hurt by us genin, so don't hold back. Express yourself as much as possible. The picture flashed through the little girl's mind. I have tried my best to guide my 2 companions, but I don't know if they can understand. Feng Jian doesn't know much about Baiun Zhejian, the senior ninja. He only knows that he is an elite senior ninja, with a calm and serious personality, and is one of the teammates of Old Man Guja. Feng Jian has no information about how he leads students. He could only encourage his 2 companions to do something fancy and get some opportunities to show off. As for Kazama himself, he was not too worried. He was happy to become a genin. If he was beaten back, he would be happy to stay in the treehouse and practice for another year. It would not be too late to come back next year. On the contrary, with 1 more year of practice, his strength could grow even more. By the way, tomorrow's test will be held in the 6th training ground. We have the time, place, and people. Aren't these some of the battle examples that the teacher told me about? Maybe we can use some of them. Zinzi is really smart. Although the previous teacher didn't teach her anything, she has thoroughly understood what is in the textbook. Ichiro, well, I can't count on Ichiro's wisdom. That makes sense, think about what methods you can use. Feng Jian continued to encourage, and Zinzi reacted quickly and thought along his guidance. Traps. We can prepare traps in advance in the 6th training ground. Fengjian, you said that we don't have to worry about hurting the teacher, so we don't have to hold back. We can use everything the teacher has taught us. What a pity, it would be great if we knew some offensive ninjutsu. Nobuko thought for a long time, and in the end she could only think of setting traps in advance. Ninjutsu cannot be learned in a short time. You can arm yourself. Bare hands and holding weapons are two different concepts. Fengjian also reminded them to improve the combat effectiveness of the two as much as possible. Yes, there are weapons. Nobuko clasped her hands together in front of her chest and suddenly realized. But we have no money. Frustration has become the norm for both of them. Come with me. Fengjian couldn't bear it anymore and decided to bleed a little for tomorrow's survival exercise. Tianation's ninja tool shop is the family business of Tian Tian, the future rich woman. Tianation's family is not a ninja family, but a business family. Tianation's parents are both businessmen, and their main business is in the capital of the Land of Fire. They are very rich. No wonder Tian Tian later played the Krypton Gold ninja tool style, he is really too rich. This ninja tool shop opened in Konoha is a new attempt by the Tian Tian family. After all, the previous business never involved arms. Now Tian Tian will graduate in a year, and the first female ninja appears in the Tian Tian family. Parents have to pave the way for their children. Even if the road to becoming a ninja is not smooth in the future, it is okay to retire and run a ninja tool shop. You choose, I'll lend you the money first. Feng Jian is also a poor guy, but there are two types of poor guys, poor to the point of being poor and poor to a poor life. Feng Jian usually has some savings to deal with emergencies after making money, which belongs to the category of poor to a poor life. Now take out this part of the money and let the two companions equip themselves. The dazzling array of ninja tools confused Nobuko and Ichiro. After hesitating for a long time, they still didn't know how to choose. 2 large kunao each, 1 for backup, 3 dozen small kunao each, 5 dozen shurikens each, detonating talismans. Feng Jian couldn't stand it anymore. Isn't this just like a country bumpkin who is at a loss when entering the city? He didn't dislike them, but felt sorry for his two companions. He didn't know whose fault it was that the ninja had fallen to this point. Give this big guy an iron rod. Before leaving, Feng Jian suddenly had an idea. Ichiro is strong and powerful, so he must be the best candidate for the frontal attack. Holding a big kunao and fighting with a bayonet? It seems to be a disadvantage. The weapon suitable for a strong person is definitely not a big kunao. It must be a heavy weapon, such as an iron rod. Even if you have never practiced, you can still swing it a few times. A month of stick, a year of knife, and a lifetime of gun. The stick is the easiest weapon to get started with. You are most suitable for Ichiro. Moreover, since ancient times, the generals with sticks and hammers are invincible, which shows its power. After some shopping, Feng Jian's deposit was emptied, and his two companions went shopping and reaped the rewards slowly. He took out 2 radios in stock. He had been fooled by the clerk into buying several radios, and now they came in handy. Tomorrow, during the battle, we will use this to stay in touch and increase coordination. Now let's go back to the treehouse and make a battle plan. Good. Bai Yunzhao didn't know that the student he just met yesterday had already laid out a complete battle plan for him. Or, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. He was a jonin. If 3 students who had just graduated from the ninja school could defeat him with a battle plan, he wouldn't be alive now. Today, he will let him see if the grandson in his old friend's mouth is really as good as his old friend said. As for the other 2, he has already known their character and so on. In his opinion, the 1-year gap is nothing. If they can keep training during the 1-year gap, in his opinion, at least they are not a problem in diligence. If they can graduate from the ninja school, their talent should not be a problem. In this case, he will make up for this link of their teacher, and the unlucky duo who have been despised for a year should be able to get out of the haze. After all, it is not good to just watch the old friends. As for Kazama, the core of today's assessment is Kazama. Although his old friend said that his grandson has good talent, he needs to see it with his own eyes. If he really has good qualifications, then he should focus on training him. If he is not worth training, he will tell the truth. Ninja is not the only way, and his old friend should understand. In Zhejian's mind, Kazama's lazy image yesterday has given him a bad label. In the 6th training ground, Nobuko and Ichiro sat upright under a tree. The shade provided by the tall tree trunks prevented the two from being directly exposed to the sun. Fukuma was 3 steps behind them, lazily leaning against the tree, bored. Zaojian had been lurking not far away, observing for a long time, and it was consistent with Fukuma's prediction of the 3 people's personalities. Sure enough, Fukuma's laziness was not a disguise, but a real laziness. The lazy Fukuma was actually called talented by his old friend. Sure enough, his grandson, no matter how unbearable he was a gifted person in the eyes of his grandfather. The sun was already high in the sky. The 3 people who had gathered at the 6th training ground since 7 in the morning had been waiting for more than 3 hours. This was enough to make these kids who had no mission experience restless. This was the first lesson they learned in the morning: ninjas must remain patient at all times. Chapter 33. The sun had lost its cover from the morning mist and was high in the sky, officially starting the day's work. The heat it emitted gradually dispelled the night's shade. Ichiro and Nobuko were indeed a little impatient after waiting for more than 2 hours. However, after waiting for a year, they knew they had no right to care, and even whether they could become qualified ninjas depended on the words of others. In Ichiro and Nobuko's opinion, isn't it just that the teacher is late? As long as the teacher doesn't mind them, they can wait for a day. That's not a long time. Kazama, who was leaning limply against the tree, was actually receiving information from Kaibataro. In order to give Byunzayama a surprise, Kazama also took out all his trump cards. He summoned the 5 little ones early and scattered them in the forest behind him. They seemed to be distributed everywhere like wild beasts, but in fact, the surroundings were all their surveillance areas. Kazama didn't do anything, but he already knew exactly how many living things there were in this area. Byunzayama, such a big elite jonin, could avoid the detection of the 3 genins by lurking for a while. They underestimated them too much. In other words, even if Byunzayama could hide from the 3 genins, his breath would be too obvious to the 5 little ones. If the 5 little ones knew, it meant that Kazama knew. Now they should be about to lose their patience due to the torture of waiting. Wait until the sun rises a little higher, the temperature gets a little higher, and consumes a little more of their energy, then we can go out and try them. Zhaojian had already thought of a strategy. Ichiro and Nobuko were still able to sit upright until now, and such patience had already satisfied Zhaojian. The only dissatisfaction was Kazama, who was leaning against a tree and almost fell asleep. He was so lazy, without any alertness of a ninja. He decided to teach Kazama a lesson later. Don't be too nervous. If your muscles and mind are too tense, it will consume your energy. If you keep doing this, before the test starts, you will have used up most of your physical strength and energy. How will you be tested then? Stand up and walk around, relax your body and mind, adjust your state, eat something and drink some water. Feng Jian didn't want to remind the 2 companions directly, fearing that they wouldn't know how to act and would be exposed. He could only remind them in this way that they would still need the help of the 2 companions in the test. Is that so? Oh, I got nervous without realizing it. Nobuko answered embarrassedly. He had been looking forward to something for too long, and the results would finally be officially announced today. Worry, nervousness, and all kinds of emotions filled his heart. Ichiro, get up and move around, Nobuko reminded. Okay. Ichilang stood up, picked up the iron rod, waved it twice in his hand, and put it on his shoulder with a smile, reluctant to put it down. Just as Byunzayjian was about to show up, he was attracted by the actions of his 2 subordinates and immediately stopped the instant body movement. He thought he was discovered, but it turned out that he was just moving his body. Byunzayjian's plan to show up was disrupted, and seeing that the 3 people on the grass had already started to replenish water and food, the strategy of consuming physical strength and energy was probably bankrupt. He suddenly felt irritated. This was an emotion caused by a plan being disrupted and not going according to his own plan. It was too normal. The career of a ninja is always accompanied by accidents. A thought suppressed this irritation. Since psychological warfare was useless, Byunzayjian did not wait any longer and showed up directly. A breeze blew by, and a cloud of white mist suddenly burst out behind the 3 people who were eating, and then the figure of Morning White Cloud suddenly appeared. The sudden appearance of the Morning White Clouds made the 3 of them alert instantly. Feng Jian drew his sword directly from its sheath and held it horizontally in front of his chest, showing a defensive posture. Ichiro was holding the iron rod and the food in his other hand, and his eyes were already looking over. Nobuko's reaction was not bad either. She had a large kunai like a dagger in her hand to protect Fengjian's flank. Okay, don't be nervous, it's me. Bai Yun had intended to start the show with a scare, but the students reacted so quickly that the situation became awkward. He had no choice but to explain. Mr. Zaojian, don't appear behind me suddenly, I will counterattack subconsciously. The enemy in front is not scary, what is scary is the opponent who accidentally breaks into the safe distance, because that means Fengjian's life is in danger. Fengjian has always positioned himself as a long-range firepower player, and the most taboo is the enemy's unreasonable approach. Everyone is here, so let's officially begin the assessment. Mission: gather the strength of the three of you and try to knock me down as much as possible. Don't worry about the means, you can use shurikens, detonating tags, any lethal means, let me see if you are ready to become ninjas. Facing Kazama's complaints, he simply ignored them and announced the next content of the assessment. Yes. Then, the assessment begins. With a wave of his hand in the morning, the atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Ichiro and Nobuko, one in front and one behind. Ichiro was in front, swinging the iron rod and shaking. Nobuko held a large kunai in one hand and swung the shuriken in the other, spinning, making a sound, and flying towards Zayama in a strange arc. Zayama was also stunned. According to his thoughts, when he announced the start of the assessment, the three genin in front of him should immediately distance themselves, hide, and look for opportunities. He didn't expect that his start would become their command to launch an attack, an unexpected move. Zinza's shuriken was launched later but hit Zaojian's vital points first. Such an attack naturally couldn't hurt Zaojian. He slightly turned sideways and dodged two of them. He grabbed one of them and knocked the last one away with his backhand. The shuriken attack was completely useless to him. He easily resolved the attack. The next moment, Ichiro's iron rod came whistling. He raised his hand holding the shuriken, trying to use the shuriken to block Ichiro's iron rod. Here, Zaojian was a bit pretentious. Even though he was a genin, Ichiro's strength plus the iron rod were powerful. With a ding sound of metal collision, Zaojian retracted the hand holding the shuriken, and with the other hand, he took out a kunai and pressed down the iron rod that was tilted by the first collision. The shuriken in his hand had already flown away, and the hand behind his back was shaking slightly. The power of the iron rod made Zaojian's hand a little overwhelmed, so he had to use the other hand to help. Nobuko was not idle. Ichiro's attack was very obvious and could not be disrupted. However, when Ichiro had used up all his moves, she thrust out the large kunai in her hand, pointing it directly at Zhao's throat, without any intention of holding back. Yesterday, Kazama said that it was impossible for them to hurt the jonin, so why should she hold back? The important thing was to show off herself as much as possible. He dodged by turning his head. Zaojian was impressed by Nobuko's ability to seize the opportunity. This attack forced him to dodge. After the first stab missed, he immediately changed the straight stab to a sweeping blow and found Zaojian's neck again. Zaojian had to pick up the kunai that suppressed Ichiro's stick to resist Nobuko's beheading attack. However, in this way, Ichiro escaped, swung the iron stick, and split Hwashin again. Zaojian had to retreat and keep a distance. Chapter 34. Ichiro and Nobuko's attack made Zaojian feel a little uncomfortable. He had no good way to deal with two fierce genin with weapons without ninjutsu or ruthless moves. He reluctantly retreated from the battle and drew his sword. As a ninja famous for his swordsmanship, he immediately had a different aura with a long sword in hand. Facing the siege of two people, it was much easier to deal with it in the morning. Ichiro's iron stick was powerful and heavy. Under his long sword, it became rough. The iron stick wielded by brute force had too many flaws. With a slight bump, the long stick fell to another place. It cut diagonally along the long stick and was about to touch Ichiro's iron stick. Faced with the threat of the long knife cutting his hands, Ichiro had to give up the long stick, retract his hands, and step back to save his life. With just one simple move, she removed Ichiro's long stick, worthy of being Konoha's elite jonin. Nobuko wanted to rescue him, but after she rushed over, Ichiro's long stick had already dropped, so she could only bite the bullet and fight with Zhao several times. The large kunai was used by Nobuko as a short sword, which finally gave Ichiro a reason to leave the battle. Without weapons, Ichiro's main attack power was greatly reduced. Fortunately, his honest character made him remember the strategy and entangle the teacher, not giving the teacher a chance to target the other two. As for himself, he could no longer think about it. Without the iron stick, he could only swing his fists. Compared with the stick method, he was much more proficient in physical skills. Seeing his student approaching him fearlessly again, Zhao Ma admired him in his heart and put away his sword. It was bullying for a teacher to draw his sword against his disciple. Now the student was unarmed, would he raise his sword and stab him? Let me see how good your physical skills are. The two fought again, and Ichiro won because of his great strength. His moves were simple and direct, with great force. Zaojian was originally trying to test Ichiro, so he didn't dodge and took several punches from Ichiro. He understood why Ichiro's physical skills were so good. If Zaojian was the same age or slightly weaker, Ichiro could rely on his good strength to bully the weaker person. But now Zaojian was as strong as Ichiro, and his speed and skills were better than Ichiro. After 3 punches and 2 kicks, Ichiro couldn't hold on any longer, and was kicked in the heart and kicked out. Nobuko was anxious, but she couldn't intervene. The two of them were entangled, and his shuriken skills had no room to play. As for close combat, Ichiro couldn't beat him, so she would be defeated if she went up. Now that Ichiro was knocked away, he immediately threw out the shuriken he had prepared for a long time to cover Ichiro. These shurikens were useless to the jonin, but the 1 or 2 pieces of paper mixed in them made him hesitate. It was not because he was afraid, but based on his experience, the pieces of paper mixed in the shurikens and kunao were most likely detonating tags. If he rushed over rashly, he would easily be affected by the detonating tags, which would not be worth the loss. Anyway, the limits of these two had been tested, so there was no need to chase them. As for whether he could capture them alive, it was secondary. He didn't think these two could cause him any trouble. Ichiro, run! Nobuko thought she had tricked Zaojian by using a kunao with a piece of paper. She helped Ichiro up and was about to hide in the woods. You two underestimated the jonin. Zaojian appeared behind them at some point. Nobuko's kunao and shuriken did make him feel uneasy, but with his years of experience on the battlefield, he soon discovered the problem with the paper. It was not ignited. The detonating tag must be ignited before it can be thrown out, otherwise it will not explode unless it is manually detonated. But can these two manually detonate it? There was no action to detonate it, okay? These thoughts flashed through his mind, and he instantly determined that this was a scam. If he played such a trick in front of the jonin, he would not be polite. The same scene as before appeared. Zaojian activated the body flash technique, and suddenly appeared behind the two men, almost like teleporting. One of them punched the two newcomers to the ground, and then tied them up like dumplings and threw them under the tree. These are the subordinates in the future, and they cannot be treated harshly. Bai Yun Zaojian recognized the efforts of the two subordinates from the bottom of his heart. Identifying with these two, his dissatisfaction with Kazama also turned into disappointment. Seeing his two teammates fighting to the death in front of him, he actually ran away. How could such a person be a qualified teammate? No, he couldn't even be called a qualified ninja. Ninjas also have classmates. Those who abandon their companions and survive alone are not qualified to be forgiven. Old friend, forgive me, your grandson is not worth your efforts. With a frosty face, Chen Jian walked slowly into the woods. He must teach Feng Jian a lesson today. This kind of forest near the grass is not too dense, and you can feel the wind from the outside, accompanied by the coolness in the forest, which is different from the warmth under the sun outside. But this slight coolness cannot extinguish the anger in my heart in the morning. A swoosh sound was heard, and the head that was filled with anger in the morning suddenly woke up, and reacted instinctively. He hid sideways behind a tree and witnessed 3 shurikens fiercely piercing into the tree trunk. You even knew to set traps along the way, but unfortunately they were useless to me and they exposed your escape route. Although he was angry in the morning, the scene of triggering the trap just now made him calm down instantly. Seeing that no new traps were triggered, Zaojian came out from behind the tree. Knowing that there might be more than one trap in the forest, Zaojian moved very carefully. Suddenly, the familiar sound of breaking air came again. Zaojian frowned and used the same trick again, using the tree trunk to block the attack, but this time he was not so lucky. The moment he flashed under the tree, it was as if Pandora's box was opened. Bowstrings, machine expansion, breaking air, rustling leaves, the quiet forest was instantly broken, and all the space around Zaojian was swept by indiscriminate trap attacks. The tree trunk where he was hiding, half of the tree trunk has been shattered by various attacks, leaving only half of the body, trembling. Zaojian was not having a good time either. He thought about triggering the trap, but because of his strength, he was not too worried. He was just a little more careful, and he was very sure that his actions did not trigger the trap. The only possibility was that someone deliberately triggered the trap and aimed it at him. Such a trap bombardment that was almost like sweeping the ground, without any defensive ninjutsu, was indeed a headache. Zaojian was also shocked. It seemed that he was really treated as an enemy. If he was full of anger in the morning, he was calm now. The trap crisis just now made him enter a wartime state. In this state, he was calm, so calm that he was almost cruel. Since the trap was triggered by someone's control, the only people here are the two people tied up outside, myself, and the missing Fengjian, so the person who triggered the trap is obvious. Let me see what you can do. Unconsciously, the evaluation of Fengjian in the morning has changed a lot from laziness and disappointment to expectation now. Chapter 35. Fengjian was hiding under a big tree, with a headset on his ear. Don't make any unnecessary movements. Just disguise yourself as an ordinary animal as much as possible. If you are discovered, just run. If you can't do it, contact me through the contract and I will use my spiritual power to help you get rid of it. There was a sound of animals howling in the earphone. Bai Yun squatted on the treetops in the morning, and he had experienced 2 waves of ground-cleaving traps. Now he had a headache. According to his perception, there was no one in the surrounding forest, but those traps were triggered inexplicably, and they were quite targeted. Once triggered, they were indiscriminate attacks at the level of ground cleaving, which made him, a wind-style ninja, a little exhausted. Wind-style ninja is not known for its defense. He believed in his own perception, which was the result of years of training as a ninja. If he had made a mistake, he would not have been alive until now. Since he had not made a mistake, then wasn't it a human who triggered the trap? This thought startled him, but he then thought of a possibility and activated his perception again, this time not targeting humans but living things. Sure enough, several animals appeared in his perception. He was not sure which one or which ones it was, but it didn't matter. They were just a few wild beasts and he could easily deal with them. He didn't know if Kazama would feel sad knowing that the ninja beasts he had worked so hard to train were easily destroyed by him. Found it, the first one. He activated the instant body technique and moved quickly in the woods with the help of the treetops. Sure enough, a wolf appeared in front of him. It's you. He saw it with his own eyes and confirmed in the morning that this wolf was Kazama's ninja beast. After all, the tactical vest on his body could not deceive people. But before he could be happy, the wolf disappeared before his eyes. Yes, it disappeared. Morning gnashed his teeth, spiritualism. Fengjian slapped the ground, and then with a bang, Sha-Tai Lang appeared in front of him, with a confused expression on his face, as if he didn't know why he suddenly became psychic. Stop pretending. If you're discovered, you're discovered. Why are you showing off your acting skills? He patted the wolf's head and comforted Sha-Tai Lang. As the saying goes, the bigger the wolf's head is, the harder it is to touch. The hair becomes tougher and prickly. Hello, report the position of the morning teacher, and everyone's position. Fengji uncovered the earphone and communicated in a low voice. Squeak. Ooh. OM. Ow. Okay, proceed as planned. There should be enough traps in the forest for a few carpet bombings. Keep an eye on his movements. Once he disappears from your sight, report immediately. After a burst of noise, the channel was cleared. Let's go and save them. Through the communication just now, Teacher Zaojian had already moved away from the grass of the training ground. Now was the perfect time to save people. Fengjian was not the kind of person who would abandon his companions. After a long detour, they finally used the earth escape to bypass the wire mesh used for security and returned to the 6th training ground from the 7th training ground next to it. Nobuko and Ichiro were leaning against the shade of a tree, resting with their eyes closed. How was your rest, both of you? Ah, Kazama, you're finally here. I was about to fall asleep. Nobuko was overjoyed. Although she knew that Kazama would come back to save her, she didn't have much hope because Teacher Zaojian was watching over her. She didn't expect that Teacher Zaojian would actually go into the forest to look for Kazama. Enough of the small talk. Let's untie you first. Move your arms and legs. Put on your headsets. The individual battle is over. Next, it's our team battle. Understood. The two raised their hands in agreement. This was the plan we had discussed yesterday. Ichiro and Nobuko would take the first step and show off themselves as much as possible, while Kazama would run into the forest, setting traps while staying away from the three people fighting to avoid being killed in one fell swoop. When the morning teacher had to go into the forest to chase Kazama, Kazama used the trap to hold the morning teacher back, and he went back to rescue the two people, and the three of them reunited. In the next group battle, Kazama was still hiding, and the front was handed over to Ichiro and Nobuko, who stuck to Zayajian like taffy. After all, this was an assessment, not a life-and-death battle, and Zayajian teacher could only beat them up at most. Kazama was responsible for seizing opportunities and launching surprise attacks. Among the three, only Kazama had the ability to hurt Zayajian teacher, and the other two could only assist. As for the two assisting people, there was no need to worry even if they were caught, because Kazama would save people according to the time. They would only fight one person. As long as you can't kill the three of us at once, then you can expect the three of us to constantly create trouble for you. Kazama is the key to this plan, and you must always be careful not to encounter Zayajian. As long as Kazama is not dead, their team will not be destroyed. If Kazama loses, their team battle will also be lost. In the forest, after encountering another wave of full coverage bombing, Zayajian walked out in embarrassment. He had figured out that if he continued to rush in like this, he would only encounter wave after wave of attacks. His purpose was not to verify the strength of the trap. His target was Feng Jian. He should not waste time here without finding the original owner. Moreover, he had been away from the grassland for some time. If he were Feng Jian, he would definitely go to rescue his companions. He didn't need to enter the forest at all. As long as he guarded Feng Jian's captured companions, Feng Jian would have to face himself. He found that he had been unconsciously influenced by Kazama's behavior. It was obvious that Kazama was the kind of intelligent ninja who liked to control others mentally. He was fooled by Kazama. When he returned to the grassland in the morning, there was no one there. He knew he had miscalculated. He was afraid that he would come to his senses soon, and his action of returning to the grassland was also part of Feng Jian's plan. Now, he was not going to take the initiative to attack. He was in the open, and his three subordinates were in the dark. Any action would be exposed under the eyes of the three subordinates. With Kazama, it would be easy to lead them to a fork in the road as before, and then make waves of calculations. With his strength as a jonin, the most correct approach was to push forward head-on. The idea in the morning was right. In the forest, Feng Jian, who had many means of investigation, already knew that the teacher had changed his mind. And he did not take the next step, but just waited in place. What should I do? Kazama, the teacher doesn't seem to be fooled. Nobuko looked at the trap she had set up in her hands, which seemed to be in vain. It doesn't matter. If he doesn't move, we can move. Isn't the trap under the grass still in use? Help the teacher to increase the strength. Here, Ichiro, try to see if you can pull it open. Nobuko, help him aim. Ichiro took the Ingrun longbow handed over by Kazama, and with his strength, he pulled the Ingrun longbow open without any hindrance. Knocking the arrow. It was the same when the arrow was knocked, there was no resistance and it was pulled into a full moon. Very good. In a moment, you two will go up first. Once you are within shooting range, Ichiro will draw the bow, and Nobuko will look at the crosshairs and direct Ichiro to shoot the arrow. After the arrangement was completed, Kazama sank directly into the ground. Even Naruto could dig a hole, so there was no reason why Kazama couldn't do it, especially since he could escape underground. The reason why he used a hole to leave here was, first, to hide the traces of movement and avoid exposing the target. Second, to confuse Ichiro and Nobuko, so that they couldn't figure out where Kazama was going. After all, once the war started, this place would inevitably be the first place discovered by the morning teacher. What if the morning teacher forced them to confess or seduce them, and they couldn't resist and let it slip? This was all possible. Chapter 36. The three people who just met yesterday, even if they had a rough plan, still lacked tacit understanding. They barely explained it and completed the steps of the plan. Since Ichiro and Nobuko were the bait to attract the morning teacher, the main output was Kazama. He made a 90-degree turn underground and hit on the slope between Ichiro and Nobuko. Ichiro and Nobuko, get ready, aim, and shoot when you are ready. Ichiro and Nobuko were directed to act through the headset. Received. He had been waiting for a long time in the morning, but there was no attack from his three subordinates, which made him a little depressed. According to previous estimates, these young men should be shouting to defeat him and would rush up to punch him a few times. Why are his subordinates so patient this time? If you keep the same posture for a long time, you will be easily distracted, just like Zaojian now. Suddenly, he instinctively got startled, feeling locked in. He saw a long arrow flying through the air. Because of the forest, the arrow was only 10 meters away from Zaojian when it exposed its whereabouts. Almost in the blink of an eye, the arrow was already in front of Zaojian. As expected of a veteran ninja, he still had room to dodge at such a close distance. It seemed casual, but in fact, he quickly moved sideways, and the arrow was avoided and nailed to the ground behind him, trembling. Zhao was very glad that the archer did not know how to restrain his momentum. This subconscious lock made him aware and gave him time to react. If the arrow was really within 10 steps, if it had not been locked in advance to give him a hint, perhaps he could have avoided the vital point, but it would definitely not be possible to avoid it as easily as it was now. What a dangerous shot! His interest was aroused in the morning. He thought his subordinates, who had been exhausted, had a new trick. He began to look forward to it. However, he must teach the teacher a lesson for being so cruel. The direction of the arrow was very clear, exposing the position of the archer. I will teach you another lesson today. The moment he flew out, he suddenly stopped again. The feeling of being locked appeared again, and the direction changed. What was going on? There was more than one person shooting arrows. The feeling of being locked is always there, but no arrow is shot. This means that the archer has been holding back the arrow. Is this forcing himself to be on guard against arrow attacks and buying time for his companions to move? What a pity, the strategy is good, but it's too obvious. Ninja, don't use common sense to infer it. Ninja method, shadow clone technique. It's impossible for an elite jonin not to be able to use shadow clone technique. It just depends on the situation whether it is necessary to use it. Here, the subordinates are clearly trying to make him unable to split himself, so he showed his skills. Oh no, Ichiro and Nobuko, move quickly, the teacher's shadow clone is chasing you. Kazama also had to move, the perception of the senior ninja was very sensitive, and his position was almost exposed just now. The bow in his hand was drawn but not yet fired, archery. Double continuous arrow. 2 arrows flew out, not caring whether they hit the target or not, he directly escaped through the earth and dug a hole. The advantage of doing this is that even if the hole is exposed, it is basically impossible to track unless there are ninja dogs, insects, or sensory ninjas. Hey, Kazama boy, your companion is in my hands, are you still planning to run away? A somewhat arrogant voice came from the earphone, Kazama, run. Nobuko's loud shouting also came. This was something that had been expected, and it did not affect Feng Jian's mood. There were many trees in the forest, and they were all large trees that could only be hugged by several people. Feng Jian was very cunning and emerged from a hole at the root of a large tree. Although the hole was very low, after emerging, most of his body had to be buried in the soil, but it was safe this way. The Zhao Jian who was chasing behind him had disappeared. Hello, who's online, please make a sound. The headset issued the command again. Squeak Yataro responded first. Kazama. Awoo, the 3 wolf siblings are here. OMOM Taro indicated that he was there too. Can you confirm the location of the morning teacher? Squeak. The shadow clone confirmed that it was guarding Ichiro and Nobuko. Awoo can smell the direction of the real body, but the exact location is uncertain. Grey Wolf, Red Wolf, and Sand Wolf, come over here. Kaibataro and Clawtaro continue to keep watch. After giving the order, Kazama put his hands together and raised his index and middle fingers, ninja technique, rain observation technique. Combining the information sensed by the 2 perception techniques, Kazama was sure that Zaojian was coming this way. His speed was not fast, but the direction was correct. In that case, he decided to give him a reminder. Ceiling technique release, sniper crossbow. This tree hole was too low, so I could only stick my head out. To use the sniper crossbow, I had to lie down. I lay down in the softened soil, and with the tree roots on my body, I was perfectly hidden and protected. Ninja technique, rain viewing technique activated the perception technique again. In the perception, the distance has been shortened a lot, and the figure of the morning teacher is very clear. After all, human-shaped water is still quite rare in the forest. Just aim at that direction, angle, wind speed, humidity, and wait for the moment when the morning teacher shows up. From Feng Jian's perspective, the moment the morning teacher shows up, he will pull the trigger, and the crossbow arrow will definitely cross a distance of 300 meters, and the power and accuracy are guaranteed. The only thing I was worried about was whether such a sneak attack on my teacher was a bit too much. After thinking about it, I removed the arrowhead from the crossbow. If the teacher was injured by the wooden stick, it would not be my fault. As Zhejian approached, Fengjian could already hear the sound of footsteps on fallen leaves. Don't be surprised, this is a forest, with leaves everywhere, you can't just avoid them if you want to. This is also the reason why Zhejian walked slowly. The fallen leaves and the sound of stepping on them are both a protection for Fengjian and a trouble for him. Can't I climb a tree? Yes, it seems that jumping on a tree will not cause any noise, and jumping on a tree will not allow you to control your body freely in the air. Facing Fengjian's crossbow, there is no possibility of dodging, and you can only bear it. Slow your breathing, narrow your eyes, put your finger on the trigger, and wait for your opportunity. As for Bai Yun in the morning, from the moment he stepped into here, his intuition had been reminding him that there was danger, danger. Although he didn't know what the danger was, he was on guard. He was curious about what kind of danger could make a senior ninja feel threatened. He took a step forward, and the dead branches and leaves under his feet roared unwillingly. It was these noises that made him ignore the sounds of the mechanism and the bowstring. By the time the bow and arrow whistled through the air, it was too late for him to dodge. He raised his arms to protect his chest, and the arrow collided fiercely with his forearm, then pressed his forearm and hit his body, causing Bai Yunzio's body to stagger. Bai Yun took a breath of cold air in the morning. The pain in his forearm made him almost certain that his muscles had been torn and his bones should have been fractured. But why didn't the arrow penetrate his arm? With the force of this arrow, it should be easy to penetrate his forearm. He turned around and hid behind a tree, only then did he have time to observe the bow and arrow that fell not far away, only to find that there was no arrowhead in the bow. Did he hold back? Bai Yun smiled bitterly in the morning. No matter what, he still underestimated Kazama. This method was almost always effective against genin. Even Chunin could be successfully attacked by a sneak attack. It was somewhat unreasonable that he, a jonin, was also hit by it. Chapter 37. He found a bandage to wrap the swollen forearm and hung it in front of his chest. Bai Yunzao stood up in the morning. This time he did not act cautiously, but drew his sword himself. Kazama, I know you are nearby and can hear me. As a teacher, I recognize your strength. The three of you have passed my assessment. But as an opponent, I am very interested in your ability. Use your full strength and let me see what you can do. Next, I will not show mercy, so be careful. Of course Fengjian could hear it, because his reconnaissance means were not limited to perception, he also had 3 physical plug-ins, and the 3 wolves had already transmitted what he had said in the morning through the headset. You damn elite jonin, can't you afford to lose? You're targeting me, right? You can do it, wait. If I don't make you look bad, I'm not Mariboshi Kazama. Baiun's shouting in the morning drove Kazama crazy. He announced the end of the assessment, asked his teammates to leave, and left him alone to target him. He really wondered if he had offended him in some way. After thinking about it, apart from the crossbow arrow that hit him just now, it seemed that there was no other intersection. This targeting was really inexplicable. No response. Bai Yun frowned in the morning. He thought that shouting would get some response. With the long sword in his hand, even though it was not his dominant hand, he felt more confident. He climbed up the tree without hesitation and rushed towards the direction where the crossbow arrow came from. Of course, he gained nothing. The hole under the tree was not well hidden. Even though he was sure that the crossbow arrow was shot from here, Fengjian had already run away. Such a despicable fighting style also made Zhejian a little angry. He hadn't even seen her face, but he had already plotted against her so many times. No matter how good-tempered and calm he was, he couldn't stand Fengjian's constant teasing. Wind escape, vacuum sword. He was eager to vent in the morning, so he used all his strength to launch the vacuum sword, which emitted a terrible wind blade, just like cutting wheat, and separated the forest part of the 6th training ground into a vacuum zone. Without the cover of the trees, I wonder how you can hide. This was the idea he had in mind in the morning. He had figured out that in this cat and mouse game between Kazama and him, he was in the open and Kazama was in the dark. Moreover, for some unknown reason, he was always under Kazama's surveillance, and Kazama could attack him with a bow or crossbow at any time. Even though he was a jonin, he could only passively take the beating and could not fight back. This was too frustrating. If you defend too long, you will lose. This injured hand was the price. Fortunately, it is not too late now. If you don't come out to fight, I will force you out. Under the vacuum sword, no tree can withstand it. I will clear a large open space with a wide field of vision. Let's see how you launch a sneak attack. If it were an ordinary person, he would not be able to continue the sneak attack. The vacuum sword can be used at a distance or close. This attack, with full force, almost covers the distance that most ninjutsu can reach. Whenever Feng Jian wants to attack, he must be exposed to others. The only thing that Feng Jian overlooked was that he had more than just a sniper crossbow. The effective range of the sniper crossbow was more than 400 meters, and the maximum range was more than 1000 meters. At such a distance, if one did not pursue accuracy, there would be no danger of exposure. Feng Jian, who was already irritated, put aside his scruples. You are going to do it to me so blatantly, why should I be scruples? Bring out the crossbow. He decided to use the most powerful crossbow to teach Zhao Jian a lesson. Sealing technique release bed crossbow. The bed crossbow is the size of a double bed, and the crossbow arrows are as thick as a thumb. There are 5 of them in a row. Because the bed crossbow has a long range and the crossbow arrows are large, it is affected by many external factors and cannot achieve accurate shooting. But it doesn't matter. With all 5 crossbow arrows on the field, firepower coverage is also possible. When the winch was turned on, the crossbow made a creaking sound. The huge force made Feng Jian much more careful in operating it. This was the first time the crossbow was used in actual combat, so he had to be careful not to break his teeth. Looking through the scope on the bed crossbow, he was still standing in the open space he had cleared in the morning, pretending to be cool. It seemed that in order to see more clearly, he even chose a central position. If I launch an attack directly, with the ninja's agility, it is likely to miss. Should I? Forget it, just launch it directly. Do you think I can really kill Zhao Jian? A hammer hit the trigger, and the bent bow arm immediately gained space to stretch, firing the prepared crossbow arrow. Swish, swish, swish. He knew the attack he was expecting was coming. But when he saw the source of the attack, his head jumped, because the source was still blocked by dense trees, which meant that all his calculations failed. He did not force Feng Jian out of his position, exposing his whereabouts, and even attracted a wave of attacks from Feng Jian. The thumb-thick crossbow arrows, even if they were made of wood, were powered by the powerful crossbow, making them look indestructible. Wind style, vacuum sword. The farther the distance, the longer it takes for the crossbow arrow to reach the enemy. Even though it's just a little extra time, it's enough for an experienced person to react. He held the long sword behind him and suddenly drew a semicircle from his side. Wherever the semicircle went, the wind-style chakra came out of the sword and formed a wind blade. The wind blade spread outward with the long sword as the center, forming a huge semicircular wind blade, destroying all obstacles along the way. The 5 crossbow arrows were no exception. The iron arrowheads only lasted a little longer, but without the support of the arrow shaft and feathers, they soon flew away to who knows where. Seeing that the attack was a vacuum sword, Feng Jian knew that this attack would be in vain. He quickly got on the winch and started the next preparation. This bed crossbow could only be used this time. 5 crossbow arrows were placed again, and the capstan was ready. In the morning, the body flash technique was activated, and he rushed to Feng Jian at the fastest speed. As long as Feng Jian showed his head, he would be sure to take him down. He was afraid that Feng Jian would not show his head. I don't know who taught him such a dirty fighting method. There was no direct confrontation and the attack was still far away. Bang bang bang. The sound that made his scalp tingle was heard in the morning. The sound was so clear that it could only mean that the distance was getting closer. But he didn't dare to rush forward. He had experienced the power of the crossbow arrow. He had just used the A-level wind-style vacuum sword to eliminate it. Now that the distance was so close, the power was even greater. Did he have to use the vacuum sword again? The thought flashed through his mind, and the crossbow arrows had already revealed a sharp cold light, about to hit him. He had no time to dodge, and barely knocked one away with his knife. The huge force made it impossible for the long knife in his hand to continue to resist. 5 crossbow arrows, 3 missed, flew past Zaojian's body, and pierced through the ground fiercely, half of which was buried in the soil. One was knocked away, and the remaining one pierced Zaojian, causing his entire body to fly backwards and then nailed to the ground. Zaojian, who was nailed to the ground, only had time to spit out a mouthful of old blood, and his neck twisted and stopped moving. Oh shit, Feng Jian watched, stunned by the scene. Thoughts of failure and murder filled his mind, and his brain instantly froze. Bang Zhejian lying on the ground turned into a wooden stake, and the horror in Feng Jian's eyes seemed to have encountered an antidote and melted away. Fuck. He drew his sword out of its sheath, and the Tosashi sword suddenly swept backwards. Ding, the swords collided. As expected, the profession of ninja cannot be viewed with common sense. The moment he saw the substitute technique, Feng Jian knew that he had been exposed, so there was a scene of drawing his sword backwards. Ninjas like this kind of trick of suddenly appearing behind. Chapter 38. You really don't look like a ninja, but I cannot deny that your strength impresses me. The two men faced off with swords, and Zhao gave his own evaluation. Thank you for the compliment. Kazama was too lazy to talk nonsense. This distance was very dangerous, especially when the opponent was a ninja who was good at swordsmanship and wind escape. It was almost like entering the opponent's absolute space. He stepped forward decisively, slashed with the cassock, used the right cassock, followed by the nine-headed dragon flash, and made 9 extremely fast attacks with the sword, which made Zhejian unable to figure out the direction of the attacks and also broke through Zhejian's defense. The two sides exchanged positions, which also gave Feng Jian some time. Why are you still struggling? Seeing that Feng Jian had no intention of giving up, he raised 2 fingers of the hand that was injured in the morning, and held a long sword behind his back with the other hand. This was the starting move of the instant body movement and swordsmanship. Why give up? We've come this far, there has to be a result. From your tone, do you think you are the winner? I don't know whether I will win or not. I only know that no one can catch me head-on as long as you give me a chance. After saying that, he showed his left hand behind him, which had been brewing for a long time. It's bad. Zhao Jian activated the instant body technique, and with a swift speed, he swung the knife, and in the blink of an eye, he put the knife on Feng Jian's neck. Even if you have a way to escape, it's too late. Maybe not, he said, and Feng Jian's body turned into a pool of yellow mud. It's a Earth-style clone, the experienced Zhejian recognized the ninjutsu. So that's how it is, he had already released the Earth-style clone, using it to buy himself time to escape? He went forward to check the location of the yellow mud and indeed found a hole for escaping underground. In other words, Feng Jian should have released the Earth clone to distract Zhao's attention, while the real body escaped underground. Looking at the dense forest around him in the morning, he suddenly felt exhausted physically and mentally. The cat and mouse game was back to square one. Moreover, without the constraints of his companions, Feng Jian had more options. Unfortunately, he was not a perception ninja who was good at reconnaissance. It was not easy to find a visitor who wanted to hide in the complex forest. Sheathing the knife, he walked towards the other side of the forest in the morning. Since the test to verify his strength was over, why should he fight for it? You like the forest, right? You like hiding, right? I want to see how long you can hide. In the morning, he arrived at the place where Ichiro and Nobuko were captured, announced that the 3 had passed the test, and then walked out of the forest and came to the meadow. He started talking to Ichiro and Nobuko in a very friendly manner. As a senior ninja, he had a lot of experience as a ninja in the morning. Any one of them would be enough to amaze Ichiro and Nobuko. Naturally, Feng Jian could not be hidden from the actions in the morning. Feng Jian gritted his teeth, put away his bow and arrow, disarmed the traps in the woods, and walked out of the forest with a gloomy face. Hey, you're out. We've been waiting for you. Today is the first group activity for our class 6. How about we treat you to a dinner? Great. Zinza jumped for joy. Ichiro didn't say anything, but his smiling expression betrayed his mood. Only Feng Jian had a cold face. Anyone who had been tricked again and again, when he finally made up his mind to fight back, the other party said he didn't want to play anymore. How frustrating and uncomfortable it was to punch in the air. No. He stabbed the grass hard with a kunao. A series of sounds came from the grass one after another. All kinds of hidden weapons, poisonous smoke, and traps were all launched and appeared before our eyes. His eyes twitched in the morning. There were still a large number of them that had not yet been launched. These 3 guys must have been prepared long ago, just waiting for him to fall into the trap. He finally understood why he had been so miserable today. Looking at her own masterpiece, Nobuko smiled embarrassedly at Zayama, then hid behind Ichiro and refused to come out. Forget it, let's meet at the Akimichi barbecue restaurant, is that a problem? No. Kazama, just go. It's free meat. It would be a waste not to eat it. You've been tired all morning. It's a good time to replenish yourself. Nobuko acted as a lobbyist with great tact. Oh, forget it, just go ahead. These are my future colleagues, how can they really fall out? Go, but I want to have all-you-can-eat barbecue. No problem, I can still afford to treat you guys to a barbecue. Zhao Jian didn't care at all. As a result, after paying the bill, Zhao Jian was depressed for the whole night. Who knew that Feng Jian would bring his family with him to eat barbecue? There were 4 of them, and they ate until they were full. Only Ichiro had a bigger appetite. But when Feng Jian summoned 3 wolves, a red panda and a little squirrel, the barbecue was consumed so quickly that Ichiro felt distressed. Wow, what a cute squirrel! Nobuko held Kai Batter tightly. Although Ichiro didn't grab one immediately, he stroked Kai Batter's hair again and again. Are these all your summoning beasts? Zhao Jian was greatly surprised. According to his idea, good summoning beasts were hard to come by, and bad ones were of no use. So even if he had the strength of a jonin, he still had no idea about summoning beasts. Of course, they are my eyes and mouth. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you could always find out my movements, as if I was always under surveillance. It turns out they were passing on information. Feng Jian's use of summoned beasts made his eyes light up. Summoning beasts did not necessarily have to be powerful, and they were also good at collecting information. They're not just gathering intelligence. Kai Battero, say hello. Hello everyone, my name is Kai Batter. I'm good at illusion and I like crossbows and nuts. When Kai Batter heard Kazama calling him, he immediately jumped onto the table and introduced himself. Hey, you can talk. Hello, my name is Mizutani Nobuko. Ah, hello, little sister. Kai Batter's front teeth were exposed when he smiled. You also know illusion? Certainly. Perform a show. This is not good. It's okay, come on. Okay then, just one. Don't ask for more. He put his claws together in a very professional manner, and then suddenly released chakra. Nobuko's body immediately froze, as if she had seen something terrible, and she trembled, and then a snake. Sure enough, it's the same old routine. It must be said that the routine is a bit old, but Kai Batter's illusion has improved. It used to be only effective on ordinary people, but now it can work on illusion laymen like Nobuko, which is a big improvement. Seeing that the magic was effective, Kai Battero patted his chest in triumph towards the others at the table. Then he jumped onto Nobuko's shoulder and pressed his claws on her head, breaking the magic for her. Zinza looked around with lingering fear, and only breathed a sigh of relief when he found that he had returned. He can also break illusions. As an old ninja, Zhao Jian saw through Kai Battero's role at once. Ninjas in direct combat hated the sneaky ability of illusions the most. Not only was it hard to guard against, but if you were not careful, you could be at risk of death. In order to deal with illusions, he had put in a lot of effort. But the appearance of Kai Batter gave him another answer. He didn't have to rely on himself to get in touch with illusions. He could also raise a pet. Thinking of the hardships he had suffered in the past, and looking at the several summoned beasts who were still showing off their barbecue, the light in his eyes flickered in the morning. Chapter 39. Mission. The barbecue party ended with everyone cheering with satisfaction, leaving everyone feeling bitter and resentful in the morning before finally paying the bill and leaving. Remember to officially start the mission tomorrow and gather in the mission hall at 8 a.m. Ignoring the team members who were still chattering, he announced his plan for tomorrow with an expressionless face in the morning. He didn't want to stay here for a moment. His wallet and his heart were both crying hard. Yes. Early the next morning, Kazama packed up and went out. Or rather, there was nothing much for Kazama to pack. He usually carried weapons and ninja tools with him. Today was his first mission, and they were all tasks like finding cats and dogs and taking children to weed. He would not leave the village, so there was nothing to prepare. He just needed to take a few commonly used scrolls with him. If you want to know which department in Konoha village is the busiest, it must be the mission hall. Every day, hundreds or even thousands of ninjas in the village take missions here to earn commissions. Most of them are Chunin and Genin, and the missions performed by Jonin are mostly A level or even S level, which are all confidential and will not be released in an open place like the mission hall. This also makes the mission hall look like a vegetable market to some extent. There is absolutely no such good thing as the Hokage receiving Kakashi's team alone and issuing D-level missions as in the plot. Oh, no, maybe there is. After all, it is obvious that Kazama is not the protagonist, and neither is Kazama's team. There are multiple windowsills in the spacious hall, on which the levels of tasks to be issued are marked, similar to the design of a bank counter. Hey, good morning, everyone. Too slow, Kazama, we're almost late, Nobuko couldn't help but complain. She finally became a ninja again. Nobuko was excited for a long time yesterday and came to the meeting point early this morning. However, Kazama arrived late on time. How could she not be angry? Don't worry, am I late? No, so what else can I say? If you want to gather earlier, please let me know in advance. Feng Jian was in a good mood. He didn't want to quarrel with the young lady. This was the cultivation he wanted to uphold. He just needed to present the facts and reason. Yu Xin's face was swollen with anger. Okay, stop messing around. Come and take a look at today's tasks and see which ones to choose. He had already mixed into the crowd and lined up in the morning, and now it was his turn. Looking for a cat. Looking at the list of people looking for cats, dogs, various pets, and all kinds of strange items, as expected, I decisively turned the page. Planting, weeding, sowing, harvesting. This is the farming series of tasks. Next. Washing clothes, cooking, and taking care of children. This is the house husband series. Take a deep breath, turn the page, and then it's gone. There are only so many tasks in the D-level task manual. Don't look at it as it's almost half full. After classification, there are only the above types. Unable to bear watching, Feng Jian threw the booklet to the other two people, who also frowned after reading it. Morning teacher, we choose farming, which includes weeding, tilling, and sowing. Seeing that Nobuko and Ichiro looked hesitant, Feng Jian made a decisive choice without even discussing it with the other two. Hey! Both of them were surprised that Feng Jian made a decision directly. Zayama looked at Feng Jian meaningfully and asked, "Are you sure?" "Sure." Kazama replied. The other two were speechless, or rather, they had no chance to interrupt. They had not made up their mind about how to choose in the first place, and now someone suddenly made a decision, and they had no way of objecting. Konoha village is very big, and it is definitely not something that can be expressed by a fan-shaped map like the one in the plot. That is only the central part of Konoha, mainly office areas and various living facilities. The residential area is not there. On the contrary, there are many villagers from Konoha around, and even many ninja clans have their own clan lands, which is equivalent to each ninja clan contracting a large piece of land. How can the Konoha Hokage building possibly accommodate it? Today's mission location is within the scope of Konoha village. We have not left the village yet, but it is very far away from the Hokage building in the center of Konoha. Looking at the land covered with weeds, one can barely tell that crops have been planted here. After all, you can still see some clumps of them, but it is obvious that Dolly was not careful enough, causing the weeds to grow wildly. The owner of the morning team is a smiling old man, hunched over, and he has to breathe heavily after walking a few steps. I am really afraid that he will lie down if he disagrees with something. All right, we've arrived at the place, let's get started. He gave an order in the morning, and the teleportation technique was activated. He disappeared, and the next moment he appeared on the top of a tree not far away, holding a long sword and resting. Come on, get started. Kazama threw the farm tools to Ichiro and Nobuko, but kept none for himself. Why don't you use tools? Why should I use these ordinary farm tools? I'm a ninja. Kazama said as a matter of course. Nobuko was visibly in disbelief and didn't understand why Kazama could say such a shameless thing. The task is for the three of us to complete together, why are you being lazy? Zinza was also convinced, he was too shameless. Who told you I was going to be lazy? You didn't even take the tools, if not being lazy, what is that? Look at you, still sitting down and reading the scroll, you are simply unreasonable. Humph. Nobuko couldn't say any more. In her mind, laziness was forgivable, but Kazama's blatant laziness was a shameless act. He was discovered and still tried to make excuses. Her impression of Kazama instantly regressed several levels. Hey, little sister, how can I say it so that you understand? Forget it, words are always so pale and powerless in the face of actions. Shaking his head, Feng Jian focused his eyes on the scroll in his hand. Zayajian, who was far away, naturally saw this scene. After yesterday's battle, Feng Jian's eccentric behavior made him not jump to conclusions so early. He was waiting to complete today's mission before judging what Feng Jian did today. While Nobuko and Kazama were talking, Ichiro, an honest man, had already started digging the soil with a hoe. For him, these farm work had been ingrained in his mind since he was a child, and now he was familiar with it and it was not difficult. From a distance, Ichiro looked more like a farmer than a ninja. Nobuko was mumbling something. Digging is not very girl-friendly. It requires a lot of physical strength. Ichiro is strong and experienced, so it's okay. But Nobuko couldn't do it. Digging consumes too much physical energy. Soon, she was sweating and panting. At this time, Ichiro had already finished half of the work, and she had also finished 1/3 of it. And Kazama was still reading the scroll as if nothing had happened. The more he read, the angrier he got. Throwing the hoe aside angrily, Nobuko came to Kazama again with a snort, "There is so much land here. Even if Ichiro and I finish most of it, you still have to participate. Are you really planning not to do anything at all? Don't worry, I'll take care of half of this land, okay?" Feng Jian said with confidence. "Humph, everyone can brag, but I'm afraid you won't be able to complete it by then, and it will delay our handover. Don't forget, this mission has a time limit. Why don't you believe me? Well, let me show you what a ninja should be like." Chapter 40. Feng Jian put away the scroll and recalled the operation of hand seals and chakra in his mind. Although he was not proficient in it, it should be able to be used here. Earth Escape. Earth Wave. Feng Jian completed the Earth Escape seal with his hands, and slapped the ground with both hands. The chakra in his hands found an outlet and flowed into the ground. The land in front of Feng Jian was like waves, rising and falling, rolling into the distance. After several waves of rolling, the land in front of Feng Jian had been rolled in succession, and it was broken into pieces, even more broken than digging the soil. The entire area of land was dug up and crushed by the earth drift and earth wave. The land was leveled and the soil was crushed. Even the drainage ditch was not affected. The next step was to get the grass out. "Okay, I've finished digging my land, and the rest is yours. Work hard and try to finish it in the morning. The sun will be very strong in the afternoon and you will get tanned." Feng Jian patted his hands, which were not mostly dusty, and walked with his head held high to the tree he had chosen in the morning to rest, looking like he had accomplished a task. "Is this the reason why you chose the farming mission?" Zhao Jian suddenly realized and no longer had any doubts about Feng Jian's choice. "Part of the reason is that I just want to try whether ninjutsu can be used for farming. Even if I retire in the future, farming can be considered a way out." Zhao Jian was speechless about Kazama considering retirement right after becoming a ninja. "How pessimistic are you about your own ninja path? Part? What about the other part? For them, teacher, you should be able to see that after being delayed for a year, they are actually not much different from students who have just graduated from the ninja school. Their progress is more the accumulation of time. Now they need rigorous training to stimulate their potential. Train them by farming. No, we use missions to train them. There are so many D-level and C-level missions. If they just complete them like ordinary people, then what's the point? After all, a ninja still needs strength. Today is the first lesson for them, ninjas can do anything the ninja way." Feng Jian stood with his arms folded, his tone full of determination. "It seems that you have high expectations for them." Feng Jian was very pleased in the morning. From his laziness at the beginning of yesterday, to the battle in the afternoon, and to what he did today, Feng Jian had been refreshing his views. "I agree to let them be my teammates, which means they have the potential. They just need some technical guidance and direction. And this requires the help of you, the team leader." Feng Jian said to Zhao Jian with a smile. "Please spare me, I'm not good at preaching. All I can do is teach them with practical actions. If you have any questions, just ask me." I felt a moment of embarrassment in the morning. I was forced by students to do something I was not good at. I didn't know how embarrassed I would be in the future. No, in my opinion, a teacher who can put his ideas into practice is a sign of being a good teacher. Moreover, the teacher is an elite jonin. There are only a few jonin who can lead a class. I thought I was being treated specially. "You are indeed treated specially." This is what he thought in his heart. When the Hokage gave him this task, he wanted to refuse it, but his old friend Kasuke specifically requested it, so he was able to lead the Kazama team. However, he couldn't say this, so he just regarded it as a special treatment for Team 6. So you want to enlighten their thinking through your actions just now. That's right. Ordinary people can actually complete D-level missions. Why do we need to hire ninjas? And the Hokage has allowed missions of this level. This means that there are things in these missions that are beneficial to ninjas, but we just haven't discovered them. That makes sense. What's next? Zhao Jian asked. He was very interested in Kazama's idea. Until now, D-level missions have been used to improve the tacit understanding of the genin and create team awareness, and are rarely related to ninja abilities. If it can really train the abilities of the genin, that would be a good idea. Next, I'm waiting for them to lose patience. Sometimes, people can't teach people 100 times, but things can teach people once, and that's enough. I want to use farming to tell them that even in farming, ninjas have their own methods. When they encounter the same thing in the future, they will think and act in the ninja way. I look forward to your results. No praise or criticism in the morning. Even though she was a ninja, Nobuko couldn't hold on to such high-intensity physical labor as digging the ground, especially since Kazama had already completed the task with ninjutsu, and Ichiro, who was born with a good physique, also left her behind. She was the one who worked the hardest, but she became the one who dragged the team down. Thinking of this, Nobuko felt a little wronged, and gritted her teeth and raised the hoe again. Unfortunately, the land would not become soft because of Zinza's belief. Zinza's physical strength was exhausted, and a long stretch of land stretched infinitely in her eyes. Why don't you go and give some instructions? Zhao Jian reminded. I still hope she can figure it out on her own. Not everyone is good at thinking, especially in unfamiliar fields, and at this time a little inspiration can open the door to thinking. After all, he is a senior ninja, so it makes sense for him to say that he is not good at teaching. You're right, but why should I be the one to preach? What about you? Isn't this your job? Feng Jian suddenly realized that he was still a student. Why should he teach others? Teaching others with half a bucket of knowledge? This was not a good thing to say. Stop talking nonsense. You've created a scene and you want me to clean it up for you? If Zinza cries, you will be responsible for comforting her. Get out of here. Are you crying? Feng Jian said expressionlessly to Nobuko, who was sitting on the ridge of the field with her knees hugged. I'm not crying. I'm just taking a break. Zinza said stubbornly. I didn't cry, but why are your eyes red? Ah, that's not important. I just want to remind you that you are a ninja. Ninjas are different from ordinary people. As a ninja, how can you farm like ordinary people? This is not right. Is farming for ninjas different from that for ordinary people? Isn't it still farming? Kazama's words confused Nobuko. Without disturbing Nobuko, who was lost in her thoughts, Kazama came to Ichiro again. This guy was in really good health. He didn't eat a lot of meat and fish. His body was supported by his talent. But his talent was all in his body, and his brain was a little slow. Now he was sweating all over, and even his breathing was a little heavy, but he had no intention of stopping. Ichiro, take a break. Here. Kazama handed over the kettle. Okay. He took the kettle with a smile, drank it all in one breath, burped comfortably, and continued digging. Don't worry, let's chat for a while. But, the mission, Nobuko, I have to help him. I understand. I want to finish your part first, and then go help Zinzi, right? He received a series of nods. But this is very slow, and it will tire you and Nobuko. Now there is a faster way. Do you want to learn it? Will I be able to learn it? Ichiro hesitated. From childhood to adulthood, he has always been a slow learner and was often looked down upon by others. You won't know whether you can learn it until you learn it. If you don't learn it, you will never learn it. Why don't you try it? Then give it a try. Chapter 41. Just now I used Earth Escape to turn the ground over. Did you see it? No. Forget it, just do it with me. The hand seal for Earth Style and Earth Wave is: pay attention to the gathering of chakra, and then slap it on the ground to release it. Kazama taught step by step, fearing that Ichiro might not understand something and dampen his enthusiasm. Ichiro watched very seriously and stumbled with his hand seals, but fortunately he was obedient and did whatever Kazama said. Finally, he slapped the ground with both hands, and his chakra disappeared without a trace. Kazama and Ichiro looked at each other, the scene was extremely awkward. Kazama, I really don't think I can learn it. Ichiro was very disappointed, but he still showed a sad and silly smile. Kazama was speechless and distressed. How many times must this big guy have been disliked that he cares so much about other people's comments? Bullshit, you want to learn it in one go, who do you think you are? I have been studying this scroll for 3 months, and I finally succeeded in releasing it today. You still want to succeed in one go? You are dreaming. Stop the nonsense, try again, and I will see what's wrong. Kazama ordered Ichiro to come again in a threatening manner, without giving this sensitive and honest man a chance to refute. Ichiro, who is tall but still a 13-year-old boy in his mind, carefully began to move again. Kazama's seemingly strong tone comforted his inner anxiety. It turned out that this ninjutsu could not be successfully mastered in one try. It took several attempts. Kazama said that he had been thinking about it for 3 months. It was a long time. I should, maybe, possibly, be able to learn it. That's right, Kazama said that you will know whether you can learn it or not after you have learned it. The second time, he stumbled again, and a bump appeared on the ground. This scene reminded Feng Jian of when Naruto was learning the summoning technique. Encouragement comes first when there is progress. Don't be discouraged. And finally, there is real progress. Continue for the 3rd time, the bulge is a little bigger. The 4th time. The 5th time, after more than 10 times, Ichiro was sweating profusely, and the bulge was getting bigger and bigger. For him, it was a clear improvement. Okay, the chakra consumption is almost complete, so don't force yourself to gather chakra. It will affect your body. Drink some water, eat something, take a rest, and then finish digging the rest of the ground. Back under the tree, Zhao Jian looked at Feng Jian with a smile without saying anything. Ichiro is strong and has good stamina, but his flexibility is a little lacking. I don't know if he can learn Earth Escape. Let's find a piece of chakra paper to test it tomorrow. Chakra paper? Leave it to me. I'll bring it over tomorrow. Zhao Jian agreed with a smile. Without doing anything, the student he was most worried about had made progress. What could make him happier than this? Chakra paper, this kind of thing is not easy to come by for a genin, but as a jonin, he can have plenty of it if he pays a little. What should Nobuko do? Zaojian asked her own question. Ever since Kazama said something to her, Nobuko had been standing there for a long time, not knowing what she was thinking. It's okay. Let her think about it. Nobuko is not Ichiro. She can completely understand the textbook and learn everything in it. She is definitely not stupid. In other words, Nobuko should be very good at thinking. Is this why you taught Ichiro the Earth Escape technique directly and let Nobuko think? That's right. Ichiro is simple-minded. Thinking is not suitable for him. He and Nobuko are the backbone. In this case, Nobuko's thinking ability is very important. I can't rely on me for command. It's very tiring for 3 people to share one brain. You. I really wanted to complain this morning. Where do you get the confidence from? Do you think others need to borrow your brain? Zinzi on the ridge finally moved, but this time he didn't complain, nor was he confused. Although I don't understand what Feng Jian said about farming like a ninja, the biggest difference between ordinary people and ninjas is chakra. Ninjas can use chakra. So. The hoe in Zinzi's hand gradually covered a layer of light blue chakra visible to the naked eye. As Zinzi dug the ground hard, with the blessing of chakra, the hoe was like a knife into tofu, and the whole hoe was immersed in the soil. Lifting it up, it brought up a large piece of soil. It worked. Zinzi seemed to have discovered the secret. His next movements were smoother and more precise. Every time he swung the hoe, he brought up a large piece of soil. It seems that Nobuko has understood something. Feng Jian grinned silently. However, if she does this, her chakra won't be able to support it. Zhao Jian was stunned for a moment, then pointed out the disadvantages of doing this. We'll find out soon. Just wait and see what he does next. At this time, Feng Jian was confident. Oh, I thought you would be disappointed. From this morning's perspective, what Nobuko did was not a big improvement. That's what you think. In fact, Nobuko's ability to use chakra to complete tasks is my goal this time. There was silence in the morning. He was thinking about what Feng Jian said. What's the point of using chakra to complete tasks? Speed up the completion of tasks. No, what is lacking in genin is the basics. Frequent use of chakra is a disguised form of training chakra skills. Different tasks definitely require different skills. In other words, different tasks require different chakra training skills. His Zhao Jian took a breath of cold air. Is Feng Jian's idea so deep? He, a Jonin, can hardly keep up with the train of thought. Thinking of this, he, as a teacher, became a little anxious. His students cheered up one by one. Does he, as a teacher, still have a sense of existence? Even if you are not good at teaching, at least you have to have some experience and knowledge to show for it. If the students ask questions and you, as a teacher, can't keep up with the pace, it would be very embarrassing. His face was pale in the morning. He could imagine that in the days to come, the leisurely life of leading the team would be gone, and he would have to cheer himself up. After pondering for a while, I still hadn't found any clue in the morning about what angle to teach the students from. Kazama, since you have such an idea, do you have any suggestions? Zhao Jian had thought it through clearly. Since he couldn't think of it himself, he would pool the ideas of everyone else. The guy in front of him had a pretty good brain. Hey, Feng Jian was interrupted. The sudden question in the morning made Feng Jian unable to react. What suggestions do you have for training your companions, my students? Zhao Jian had a blank expression on his face, as if he was not talking about his own business. It's just teaching according to the students' aptitude. Nonsense, everyone knows to teach students in accordance with their aptitude. Be more specific. Understand them from all aspects, and then use your experience as a teacher to assign them a path of progress that is unique to them. Nonsense again. Yesterday's fight was just my attempt to test your abilities. I know exactly how capable you are. Zhao Jian was impatient with Feng Jian's way of speaking. It was like an onion, which needed to be peeled off layer by layer. No, you don't. For example, do you know the chakra properties of your students? Do you know your students' chakra talents? Do you know your students' physical conditions? Strength, speed, endurance, reaction, etc. We are all children from ordinary families. Our talents are destined to be invisible to the naked eye. This requires you, the teacher, to peel off the surface and understand deeply. Then expand your discoveries on us. Chapter 42. The mission continues. The conversation with Feng Jian still echoes in my ears. I can understand every word in the morning, but I have never thought about it in this direction. My former team leader only guided me in action, and never explained why. So I have come to where I am now with my hard work and talent. Although I seem to be gifted, I am actually confused and have not figured out my own path. Ichiro and Nobuko were already exhausted in the field. As long as Ichiro's chakra was restored, he would use Earth Escape technique and Earth Wave. When his chakra was gone, he would dig with a hoe. Nobuko used chakra to strengthen the hoe from beginning to end. Although she restrained herself later, the total amount of chakra would not change much in a short period of time. As a result, the two of them had almost exhausted their physical strength, energy, and chakra. They lay on the ridge of the field and could only breathe. I'm sorry, I failed to complete my part of the task, Ichiro admitted his mistake honestly. Let me rest for a while. Even if I don't sleep today, I will definitely complete the task. Zinza was unwilling to admit defeat and was ready for a night battle. No need, leave the rest to me. You guys have a good rest. Kazama was not unhappy at all. On the contrary, he was very happy for his two teammates. They were hardworking and ambitious. They might not have much talent, but they were able to listen to suggestions. Ichiro was strong and Nobuko was smart. Kazama was very satisfied with his two teammates. Don't you blame us? Nobuko was not sure whether Kazama was being sarcastic. He finally had a teammate like Kazama, and he still cared about Kazama's feelings. Why do I blame you? Blame you for not completing the mission? Is it because you didn't work hard enough? Don't forget, I was the one who taught you how to use chakra, and you trusted me completely without any doubt. Why should I be angry? On the contrary, I am very happy. I am happy that you are working hard to learn new things. Don't think too much. We are genin. While completing the mission, training is our main job. At least that's the case for our Team 6. Don't be embarrassed. Kazama comforted. That's right. Although it was Feng Jian's reminder, I can see your efforts. It's very good. You are worthy of being my student. Zhao Jian straddled the long sword and walked forward. You guys have a good rest. I'm going to go hunt some game. After training, nothing can make people happier than having a big meal. Feng Jian stood up and prepared to nourish his two companions. Adequate nutrition will be more conducive to the body's recovery. I'll go, hurry up. Zhao Jian took the initiative to speak. Elite Jonin hunting, even a tiger can't stand it. Yes, Feng Jian is happy to be free. The speed of the Jonin was used for hunting, which was the tragedy of the wild beasts in the forest. Less than a quarter of an hour after going out, he came back carrying a wild deer in the morning. One of the scrolls that Feng Jian brought with him was sealed with daily necessities. He took out a large pot, added water, and stewed it first. Then he drew out his machete from his waist, skillfully gutted the wild deer, and then cut out the meat. He put part of it directly into the pot, blanched it with hot water in the pot, and then added seasonings and stewed it. Cut the other part into small strips, put them on a skewer, and grill them by the fire. You can choose to eat dry or liquid food. In order to balance the nutrition, I also picked some wild vegetables and put them in when serving. The combination of meat and vegetables is perfect. Sigui, Feng Jian can cook such complicated dishes. Nobuko and Ichiro are both orphans. They can satisfy their own appetites, but they don't have the skills to cook food that can be called dishes. Feng Jian is different. He has been influenced by the various food cultures of the flower-growing family in his previous life, and he has been influenced by old man Guja in this life. It's not easy for him to cook some rough big pot dishes. When I see Feng Jian, I think of the days when I carried out missions with my old friend. As long as Zhejian is the captain, the old man can always be found in his team. Okay, the meat is cooked and the barbecue is ready, let's eat. It's delicious, Zinzi exclaimed in surprise after taking a bite. Hamichiro nodded repeatedly. The second piece of meat had already entered his mouth and he had no time to speak. When is the happiest time to eat? The answer is when you are hungry. If you like something, eat more. The big pot meal is not that delicious. It can only be said that it is not bad. When you are hungry, everything tastes delicious. In the afternoon, with the ideas from the morning as a foundation, Ichiro and Nobuko did not rush forward to sow seeds. Instead, they had their own ideas. Ichiro's idea was simple. He was used to doing farm work, so he cleaned the grass that had already appeared on the ridges. He was familiar with it and directly borrowed from his previous experience. He found a branch with fangs and claws, pressed it on the ridges and swept it like a rake, sweeping the weeds that had been loosened and had no roots to rest on, like garbage on the ground. Making a nest. Ichiro didn't learn the earth escape ninjutsu in the morning, so he continued to practice. Kazama was the one who made the nest. It was also earth escape ninjutsu, and there was no need to change the nature. One just had to control the chakra to slightly change the shape of the surface soil. Sowing seeds, this method that Zinza came up with, is to shoot out like a shuriken, and creatively spread chakra on the fingers. Every time you take a seed, stick the seed on your finger, and you don't have to worry about taking too much or too little. With the technique learned from the shuriken, you don't have to worry about not putting the seed in the right place. Then Ichiro continued to sweep the soil with branches to cover the seeds, and that was it. The farming task is completed, and it is not much slower than normal farming. Go back and hand in the task, and continue tomorrow. The next day, we picked fruits and practiced shuriken, being responsible for knocking the fruits down, and teleportation, being responsible for catching the fruits. On the third day, delivering letters and practicing teleportation. Day 4, gather herbs and practice forest sneaking and earth escape. The fifth day. Class 6 has become obsessed with D-level missions. Other classes carry out a mission every 2 or 3 days, but they have at least one mission every day. For missions like delivering letters, they even take on several in a single day. In just a few months, the 6th class had accumulated hundreds of D-level missions. The thankless tasks such as farming and garbage cleaning were almost all done by the 6th class. Other classes often complained about these tasks because they didn't get much money, had a lot of work, and were tired. The 6th class went and came back happily, and complained that it was not enough. Farming was addictive. Ichiro and Nobuko's daily income of several hundred or even 1,000 taels filled their pockets. At Kazama's suggestion, Ichiro ordered an octagonal iron rod. Don't underestimate this iron rod. It is not made of fine iron, but is made of 8 triangular columns pieced together in order, and tied with steel wire to ensure that the iron rod is round and integrated. The reason for doing this is to ensure the quality of the iron rod itself while also having a certain degree of elasticity. Ichiro majored in stick techniques. The wooden stick was too light for Ichiro and was useless. The iron rod was of the right weight, but too hard. This structure was just right. After much deliberation, Nobuko finally chose the sword, which was the result of a discussion between Zaojian, Fengjian, and Nobuko. Nobuko was agile and decisive, and her pursuit of perfection made her very suitable for using a sword. The sword she chose was not a samurai sword, but a sword with a blood groove on the back, a double-edged front, a curved blade, and a slender Zaihu-chun sword. With the instant body technique learned from Zaojian and the sword drawing technique taught by Fengjian, she could cut a tree trunk as thick as a thigh with one sword, just like cutting melons and vegetables. The murderous swordsmanship in Nobuko's hands was as precise and elegant as the words of the sword girl. Chapter 43. Sea-level mission. The tasks in Konoha village are divided into 4 levels. The tasks that the morning team has been doing for several months are all D-level tasks, which are used to help beginners gain experience. Unexpectedly, the morning team is not in a hurry at all. After doing D-level tasks for several months, they have no intention of upgrading the task level. The D-level tasks have been cleared several times by several people. If it were in the past, Zhao Jian might have upgraded the mission level after the team had been running in for a while, but with Feng Jian's suggestion and the fact that there were no major missions recently, Zhao Jian saw that no one was interested in upgrading the mission level, so he simply didn't mention it. Yes, Zhao Jian is a diligent person. He often takes a few days off before continuing to go on missions. In recent months, Zhao Jian has become the most leisurely time. After receiving the tasks every day, he acts as a supervisor. When he is interested, he gives instructions to the 3 people. When he is not interested, he sleeps until the afternoon. He watches the progress of the 3 people, enjoys the respectful titles of the 3 people, and also gets half of the remuneration for completing the tasks for free. It is really comfortable. I felt guilty for my laxity during this period, but when I thought of Feng Jian's suggestion, I thought, continue to accumulate mission experience, complete D-level missions, practice and complete missions at the same time, and steadily increase my strength and money. What a good thing! I regretted and cried while enjoying my leisure time, which was probably my biggest worry during this period. I was also planning to complete a mission today, but was asked to leave alone by the Hokage. Morning, how is your team's coordination going? The 3rd generation asked with a smile, his voice gentle yet majestic. Report to the Hokage, the team members are working hard and have made great progress compared to before. This is what Chen Jian really said. A few months is not a long time. For other geniuses, there will definitely be progress. But for Team 6, all the progress was earned through hard work. This is the reason why Chen Jian acted so hard. Oh, haha, it seems that Zaojian is very satisfied with his students. The 3rd generation still had such a gentle tone. There was no shortage of genin in the village, but genin with real talent to reach the jonin level were rare. They were either a few scattered geniuses or family members. The 3rd generation of course knew the members of the morning team. In his opinion, none of the 3 had the talent to become independent ninjas. The reason for forming a team like this was that the other students who graduated in the same year as Kazama already had teammates, and there was one extra person, and Kazama was not popular among his classmates. Another reason was that he wanted to create another Mariboshi Kasuke. Only when there were more people like Mariboshi Kasuke could Konoha village be truly stable, instead of being full of ambitious people. 3 orphans teamed up together. As long as they grew up, they would become the benchmark for civilian ninjas. This has actually been done in the past. For example, Jiraiya and the 4th generation Minato Namikaze were all descendants of civilians and had no family ties. With their rise, the children of the family could no longer completely occupy the upper echelons of Konoha. A path was opened for the children of civilians, and Kazama and his group were just one of the many successors chosen by the 3rd generation. I've read the mission records of the morning team. Your employer has given you a very good evaluation, and you have carried out quite a few missions in the past few months. Can you increase the difficulty of the missions? Only with sufficient mission experience can you become a powerful ninja. The 3rd generation's meaning was very clear. They had done enough D-level missions, and it was time to upgrade the mission level and stop slacking off on D-level missions. Yes, from today on, the morning team will apply to perform C-level missions. Yes, that's right. Young people should be motivated. Just go to the mission hall to get the C-level missions. I won't specify them. You can choose them yourself. Start with the simple ones first and pay attention to safety. Yes, thank you for your concern, Hokage. The idle temperament that Zaojian had cultivated over the past few months was swept away, and his face returned to the serious and earnest expression when he first met him a few months ago. I just received a message from the Hokage that the Zaojian team can carry out C-rank missions starting today. Okay, Zinza jumped up happily, but did not agree, and the atmosphere was really awkward. Did I say something wrong? Do you remember why we took the D-level mission? For cultivation. Yes, for the purpose of training and improving strength, but now we have to take on C-level tasks. Do you know what C-level tasks are? Isn't the C-level mission just? Ichiro kindly reminded her, the mission we went out of the village to perform was C-level, and neither the teacher nor the teammates came back. Either be honest or don't talk, because talking can choke people to death. As soon as he said this, he punched Nobuko hard, completely eliminating Nobuko's excitement. The missions in the village are divided into 5 levels, with D-level missions being the lowest. The missions we did before were of this type, mainly in the village, and basically not dangerous. C-level missions are missions that are somewhat dangerous, such as eliminating bandits, hunting wild boars, etc., which may involve fighting, but the fights are fought by ordinary people, and very few ninjas participate. B-level, this kind of mission usually involves the participation of enemy ninjas, fighting with ninjas, such as going to the enemy country to inquire about intelligence, assassinating a certain mission, etc. A-level, almost all of them are ninja group missions, involving the politics and economy between many countries, etc., missions with huge impact. S-level, the highest level of missions, are all top-secret missions. Only elite jonin can complete this kind of mission, and it is extremely dangerous. Take the opportunity to learn about ninja missions in the morning. A C-level mission means we have to face danger and slaughter. Are you ready? Zhao Jian stood with his arms crossed, his tone as bland as boiled water. But everyone present was very familiar with Feng Jian, and they knew that Feng Jian was at his most serious at this moment. Then why don't we just not take C-level missions? Zinza's voice became lower and lower as she spoke. She was so weak that she thought others were bullying her. Then we have to accept it. We are ninjas, and we often have no choice in missions. In the morning, he wanted to dispel Nobuko's idea of retreating. He had heard about the unlucky duo of Nobuko and Ichiro. So he could forgive Nobuko's weakness, but as a teacher, he couldn't let his students be weak forever. Let's look at the tasks first. Seeing that everyone had fallen into silence, Zhao Mo picked up the task catalogue. Which one to choose? He habitually asked for Feng Jian's opinion in the morning. Since we can't dodge, let's follow the old rules and learn a lesson first. Let's do it in a way that can draw blood. You are ruthless. Well, this is a matter of time. It is a good opportunity to test the results of your training during this period. He pointed to the task list and said, this is it. Task, eliminate the bandits. Gather at the entrance of Konoha village at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bring a full set of ninja tools. This mission requires us to go out of the village and camp. Everyone, be prepared. It's time to disperse. With a wave of his hand in the morning, he disbanded the team. Chapter 44. Bloodshed. The remaining 3 looked at each other, thinking that they probably couldn't complete the mission today, so they should just go their separate ways. Feng Jian turned and left. Tomorrow would be a day of bloodshed, and Feng Jian felt that he needed some mental preparation. It's not that he has never seen blood. Over the years, Feng Jian has slaughtered at least 800 animals, if not 1,000. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is an executioner. But when it comes to the time when a ninja sees blood, the modern thinking in Feng Jian's bones begins to emerge. Although it was a ninja world where human life was worth less than grass, Kazama's mind inevitably crossed the thought of killing after the trial. He was shocked by his own thoughts and quickly drove away this thought, otherwise it would harm him sooner or later. He repeatedly emphasized that he was a ninja who killed without blinking an eye, and fell asleep in a daze in the middle of the night. He said that he asked the other 2 to be prepared, but in fact, the person who should be prepared the most was Kazama himself. Along the way, Kazama was visibly silent, while Nobuko, due to the novel experience after leaving the village, quickly overwhelmed the upcoming test and kept chattering. As usual, I will not interfere with this mission, you can solve it yourselves. What I want to remind you is that the mission is to annihilate, don't show any mercy. Zhao Jian had a serious face and said this with great momentum. Let's discuss the plan. I'll sense the situation in the stronghold first, and then we'll enter the stronghold separately and deal with the enemy as quietly as possible. If we're accidentally exposed, Ichiro will face the enemy head-on, Nobuko will finish off the enemy, and I'll provide long-range fire support. Understood. Action. The three of them approached the fire-lit mountain village silently like cats in the dark. Kazama chose the front because there was a watchtower in front, and Kazama's bow and arrow could kill the enemy from a long distance. If it were Ichiro or Nobuko, they would be easily exposed by climbing up and down. As for throwing kunao, throwing it from the bottom to the top could not guarantee the lethality. Ninjutsu, summoning technique. The five little ones instantly appeared in front of Feng Jian. He patted the heads of the five little ones one by one and began to assign tasks. Kataro and Shuotaro, come in with me. You two don't have to rush to take action. Just help me when necessary. Feng Jian still wanted to be safe. This was a murder. Who knew what kind of complicated situation would happen? Kyotaro had illusion skills, Shuotaro had underground escape skills, and could launch a sneak attack. If the three brothers of Grey Wolf had the ability to hide their tracks, he would have wanted to bring them all in. Kaibataro hid inside the clothes on Kazama's chest and followed Kazama, using underground burrowing to quietly go behind the gate of the mountain stronghold. He used his machete to cut the neck of the bandit on guard without giving him or her any time to react. To be on the safe side, Kazama even covered his mouth. As soon as the bandit on the other side looked over here, the machete flashed with cold light and flew over, and the handle of the knife sank into his chest. Before the bandit who had been stabbed in the neck fell to the ground, Feng Jian flashed out, covered the bandit with the knife in his chest again, pulled out the machete, and stabbed it again. The bandit struggled for a few times and lay softly on the ground. The two bandits on the lookout tower were completely unaware, so Feng Jian was able to catch his breath for a while. He tried his best to keep his mind clear and not look at the two people lying on the ground. Unlocking the sealing technique, bow and arrow, with the longbow in hand, the familiar feeling made Feng Jian feel more at ease. The dark night gave Feng Jian good protection. This corner, if it was in broad daylight, was almost clear at a glance, but at night, it was pitch dark. This was the place. The bow and arrow were pulled on the line, aiming, and released. Everything was like an instinctive action. In the dark night, the arrow could not even be seen. The hand holding the string loosened, and the figure on the lookout fell to the ground. It was that simple. The sound of falling attracted the bandits on the other side. They just looked around, which gave Feng Jian a second chance to shoot. The arrow, with the knight, pierced the bandit's body again. The after effect made the bandit's body retreat half a step and lie in the lookout without falling, reducing the possibility of exposure. It was a dark and windy night, a time for murder and arson. The darkness of the night hid the killings well, so there was no direct contact with the blood. Except for the increasingly strong smell of rust in the nose, there was no other discomfort. After getting used to the convenience of shooting arrows in the dark, Feng Jian felt more and more comfortable, pulling the bowstring, knotting the arrow and shooting the arrow. It seemed that all this was just an exercise in the dark, not a killing. Finally, there was a commotion in the village. It should be that Nobuko or Ichiro was discovered. Feng Jian looked serious and hurried over there, dealing with the bandits he encountered. Sure enough, it was Ichiro who was exposed. Even though he was a ninja, Ichiro's infiltration and hiding skills were still a bit rough. Coupled with his aggressive fighting style, this kind of infiltration and assassination drama was not suitable for him. Since he was exposed, Ichiro simply stopped hiding. Holding the iron rod, he was like a tiger among sheep, sweeping and chopping. Ordinary bandits holding homemade weapons dared not approach, because no one could withstand the blow of Ichiro's iron rod. The heavy weapon that hurts and kills anyone who is hit, in Ichiro's hands, the lethality is fully demonstrated. Damn it, it's a ninja, get out of the way and let me deal with it. The leader, dressed like a samurai, drew the long sword from his waist and took a stance. The other bandits didn't dare to attack, so they made room for the two of them. You've killed so many of my men, I want your head as compensation. The samurai also knew how to fight, and while he was speaking, he suddenly launched his strongest attack. Dang, the samurai sword and the iron stick collided without any effort. Ichiro, who was holding the stick with one hand, did not move his body at all. He just leaned the stick on the ground to complete this defense. On the other side, the samurai leader's expression changed drastically. His strongest did not work, and the force from the samurai sword made his hand holding the sword tremble slightly. If it were someone else, he might have been hit by this move, but the opponent was Ichiro. If we talk about the fighting methods he is most familiar with, one is Kazama's long-range bow and arrow output, running away when he sees someone, and the other is Nobuko, who relies on her fast speed, sharp sword, and likes to play with swords. Kazama's rogue fighting style, Ichiro can only defend. However, he has dealt with Nobuko's swordsmanship many times and has a lot of experience. This bandit leader should have inherited the swordsmanship of a samurai, but it was obvious that he was not very good at it. He could bully ordinary people, but he had no idea how to deal with Ichiro. Except for the first unexpected sword drawing technique, which was blocked by Ichiro's motionless one-handed stick, he could not form any effective offensive. The iron stick was as light as a feather in Ichiro's hand. Without any skill, he smashed the samurai leader with one stick after another. The samurai leader could no longer hold on. The knuckles of his hands were broken and his samurai sword was deformed. He could only roll left and right to escape in a panic. After finally escaping from Ichiro's attack range, they wanted to call on their men to attack, but they found that they were in vain. The men who had surrounded the two of them just now were now much thinner, and they all looked at Ichiro with fear, not daring to step forward. "Okay, let's make it quick and decisive. The rest is up to you." The familiar voice of Kazama came from the headset. Nobuko and Ichiro slowed down, and the murderous intent in their eyes reappeared. In the eyes of Ichiro and Nobuko, the dozen or so bandits were only a matter of time. Feng Jian, who had shot several arrows from a distance, understood the situation. He told the two men through the headset to make a quick decision and not to stay any longer, but to go to the leader's room. Killing people without looting them is the biggest waste. Feng Jian doesn't care what other time travelers do, but he is a poor man, and poor people have no right to talk about these things. Chapter 45. Sequelae. Ugh, I can't take it anymore. It's all Kazama's fault. We had to drag it out until morning. It would have been better if we just burned it down in the evening. Nobuko complained weakly, holding onto the tree trunk. Stop trying to pass the blame on others. If you have the guts, just agree to it. Since you've agreed, you agree with it. How can you? Ugh, stay away from me. I feel sick to my stomach when I see you. Feng Jian's face was pale, and his words were like Ichiro's iron rod. Every stick was a critical hit, hitting Nobuko's heart. What do you mean you feel sick to your stomach when you see me? Say vomit and stay away from me, Zinza said halfway and couldn't hold on any longer. She turned around and lowered her head to face the tree trunk again. After a night of killing, the three nervous men were exhausted, so they planned to take a break before destroying the bodies. However, they could not hold back and slept until dawn. It would have been fine if it was dawn, but the three of them were all novices. With the cover of darkness yesterday, they did not know how bloody the scene was. When it was bright, the scene was clear at a glance. Then two of them could not hold on any longer. I don't know who vomited first, and then the two of them competed in vomiting. I thought he was so strong, but it turned out to be all fake. He secretly laughed when he saw it in the morning, but it was just a smile. It was the first time, so this was normal. This was like he had just gone to the battlefield. If he really wanted to kill people without blinking an eye, he would have to consider the character of the students. Why is Ichiro okay? Feng Jian asked in disbelief as he looked at Ichiro sitting aside as if nothing had happened, admiring the sunrise. Ichiro looked at Kazama blankly, then at Nobuko. Seeing that everyone else was staring at him, he pointed at the bodies and said, "They were shot by arrows, chopped by knives, and there is blood everywhere. I used a stick, so there is no blood." Ichiro's words silenced Kazama and Nobuko. Indeed, they felt nauseous and vomited, not only because of the psychological discomfort after the killing, but also because of the sensory stimulation caused by seeing the scene that looked like a slaughterhouse after dawn. It was the result of double discomfort. Ichiro's eyes flickered. Those who saw blood were killed by my companions. I just knocked them down. He kept comforting himself in his heart and actually withstood this bloody test. In the end, the village was burned down in the morning because the three students were really exhausted. Come, divide the spoils. There are more than 300 million taels of cash, a box of various jewels and jades, 4 good samurai swords, and a secret manual on swordsmanship. Let's see how to divide it. Feng Jian may be greedy for money, but when he sees that there is a share, he will never eat it alone. Wow, that's a lot of money. The two companions' eyes lit up. They had been carrying out the mission for several months, and after deducting daily expenses, they had only saved up a few 100,000 taels. 3 million taels was an astronomical figure for them. Although they all looked at it with envy, they all kept silent. In the end, Feng Jian made the decision. Teacher Qunke took 90 yuan, and the three of them shared 210 million yuan, 70 yuan each. The three of them had no way to get the jewelry, jade, and samurai swords, so they could only ask teacher Zaojian to sell them on the black market and then divide the money. What about the sword skills secret book? What else can I do? Of course I'll keep it. There are 4 of us in the team, and 3 of us use swords. The more of this kind of good thing that can be passed down, the better. Feng Jian decided to keep the swordsmanship manual. He flipped through a few pages and finally stuffed it into Nobuko's pocket. Iai sword slashing was not in line with Feng Jian's style. After the mission was completed, the group returned to the village to hand over the mission and received a commission that was nearly double the commission for a D-level mission. Because it was a C-level mission, they had 3 days of vacation. As a result, the next day, the two of them gathered in the treehouse tacitly. Why are you here? Don't you know how to spend your vacation? Feng Jian was a little impatient. Anyone who is woken up from sleep would be a little grumpy. I really don't know how to spend it. Ichiro smiled innocently. In the past few months, he was so tired that he fell asleep as soon as he lay down, and started to work on missions when he woke up. He didn't have any proper vacation. Now he suddenly has 3 more days, and he really doesn't know how to spend it. According to his idea, he will continue to take a few D-level missions to make money and practice at the same time. Zinza disagreed, thinking that the D-level mission was too time-consuming and energy-consuming. They were not short of money for the time being, so they should use their time on cultivation. The two of them decided to look for Feng Jian. The two knew the location of Feng Jian's treehouse. After all, they often came here for a meal. If you want to practice, just go and practice. Why are you looking for me? How can I help you practice? He yawned loudly. He didn't know why, but Feng Jian was particularly lazy today. But we don't know what to practice. Nobuko said this to Feng Jian, and also to herself. She didn't know when it started, but the people in Team 6 could always get some hints or suggestions from Feng Jian. Over time, the first person they thought of when something happened was Feng Jian. It was only after Nobuko asked this question that she realized how much they relied on Kazama ideologically, so after she finished speaking, she fell into silence. It was unclear whether it was self-blame or expectation, but in any case, the atmosphere became quiet. Feng Jian didn't know what to say. He was grateful for his teammates' trust, but also felt deeply guilty, because many of those seemingly reasonable suggestions were Feng Jian's ideas, which might not be suitable for his two teammates. This led to some ideas being imposed on his two teammates. Facing his teammates' heavy trust, Feng Jian closed his eyes and thought about how to repay them. Let's go find the morning teacher, Feng Jian said. Akazama's words made Ichiro and Nobuko at a loss. Was he unwilling to teach them, or did he have some opinions about them? What I'm going to say next is the result of my years of thinking, but I need someone with enough experience to correct my suggestions, so go find Mr. Zaojian, we need his help. The serious tone is unquestionable. Once Feng Jian has this tone, it means that the problem is very serious. Here, it shows that Feng Jian attaches great importance to the correction of Mr. Zaojian's experience. Okay, but we don't know where the morning teacher is. Konoha village is so small, just treat it as a D-level mission. Goal, find the morning teacher. Kazama said, waving his fist. As soon as the topic of the mission was brought up, Ichiro and Nobuko became excited and immediately spoke up in agreement. The whole process of finding someone was not very exciting. Feng Jian used the perception technique and the spiritual technique, asked Wu Xiao for help, and Zinzi and Ichiro were responsible for asking acquaintances. Then they found Baiun breakfast, which had already started. Of course, they were not alone in the morning. There was also old man Guji and a sturdy young man whom they did not know. Judging from the appetizers on the table, the three of them had been eating for a while. Morning teacher. 3 little brats suddenly appeared and frightened the 3 people who were enjoying the relaxing time with their companions after the mission. After seeing who was coming, Zaojian introduced them to the other 2 people at the table with a smile, mainly the burly young man Takuno. It was not the first time that old man Guja met Feng Jian's 3 companions. Takuno, these are my 3 lovely students. They are very outstanding. Maybe they can catch up with you in the near future. Zhao Jian did not forget to attract hatred to his students. Haha, hello, I'm Chunin Takuno. Nice to meet you. It was the first time they met and they were not familiar with each other, so Takuno did not respond to the captain's joke. Chapter 46. Tactical System. They ate and drank together and the morning passed by like this, until the dinner was over and Takuno stood up to say goodbye. You haven't left yet, you're not here for a free meal, are you? Tell me, what's the matter? To be honest, it was a bit too much to come out for a drink in the morning, but there was nothing I could do. I had been very comfortable in the mornings recently, while my two old friends were a bit inferior. He put all his time and energy on the students, which made it much more difficult for the two old friends to carry out their tasks. I had to take advantage of this wave of time to keep in touch. Grandpa Guja, don't leave in a hurry. Your experience is still needed for this matter. This is not the place to talk. Let's go to the tree house. Feng Jian stopped the old man who was about to continue his mission. The group arrived at the tree house and laid out tea sets and snacks. They were ready to have a detailed chat, which ruined the morning. What exactly do you want? Kazama told everyone in Team 6 what happened when Ichiro and Nobuko came to see him in the morning, and then he wanted to convey his thoughts to everyone in Team 6. This is my fault. As a teacher, I should have discovered these and found a solution. Zayajian said ashamedly. After apologizing to the student, Zayajian straightened his face and said, Kazama, I know you have always been a person with ideas. Since everyone is here today, don't worry. Your grandfather and I will give you the right advice. Okay, here's what I think. From what happened this morning, I discovered that the problem was not that Ichiro and Nobuko came to me for advice, but that we, as genin, did not have a good tactical guide. Tactical guidance. Everyone was confused and didn't understand what it meant. As the name suggests, it is guidance at the tactical level, but we don't have a complete, systematic guidance. The result is that after Ichiro and Nobuko lost their guidance, they have no idea what to do. This is my problem. I am your teacher and I should be responsible for all these matters, he apologized again in the morning. No, Mr. Zayama, you don't need to apologize. Not only did you not do it, but no one else even realized it. It was just a question I raised. Feng Jian interrupted Zayama's apology and gave an explanation. Then what do you think we should do? Old man Guji was the person who knew Feng Jian best. He went straight to the point and raised the key to the problem. It's actually very simple. Based on the students' talents, interests, personalities, and environment, the tactical instructor creates a tactical model for each genin that suits their growth characteristics. Multiple tactical models can be combined into a tactical system. The tactical model refers to an individual's growth pattern, while the tactical system is a system formed by the combination of individual abilities. Everyone looked confused. They knew every word, but when they put them together, they were still confused and had no idea what was going on. Okay, let me put it another way. If I want to become an elite ninja like Mr. Zayama, what should I do? Kazama paused and asked after carefully considering his words. Of course I train hard. Nobuko answered without hesitation. This guy was just a jerk. He obviously didn't understand and was still trying to show off his presence. Nobuko, listen carefully. Yes. Nobuko's answer is not wrong, but it is too broad and has almost no value. But I want to set the goal to be the morning teacher. Everyone should have an idea of how to do it. Then just compare yourself with the morning teacher and make up for the shortcomings. If your swordsmanship is not good enough, practice swordsmanship. If your wind escape is not good enough, practice wind escape. In other words, carve yourself into the mold of the morning teacher as much as possible. In my opinion, every elite jonin is a perfect tactical model. However, due to factors such as people's talents, personalities, experiences, interests, environment, etc., no two people are exactly the same. No matter how similar they look, even if they are brothers or fathers and sons. Therefore, tactical models cannot be used directly. They must be constructed step by step according to the characteristics of the genin themselves. Create a virtual tactical model for the genin. Let them have a clear and complete goal. The reason why Nobuko and Ichiro came to me today is because they are confused and don't know what they should do. When they were carrying out D-level missions before, even if the morning teacher was not present, they could calmly think about how to complete the mission in the ninja way. We gave them a way to think. The same is true for tactical models. If we give them a tactical model, they will not be confused and will take fewer detours. In my opinion, being able to graduate from the Ninja Academy means that one has ninja talent, at least the talent to start as an elite chunin, but many people waste their few talents and end up being mediocre. Only a small number of people, through their own efforts, thinking and luck, embark on the path of becoming a strong jonin. After these words were spoken, the treehouse fell into silence and everyone began to think. The old man and the morning teacher were recalling the past, hoping to find confirmation of what Kazama said from their memories. Can you tell me in detail? He rubbed his eyebrows in the morning. He had been thinking too much today and now he was dizzy. To put it simply, it is to create a virtual future self for each person in advance according to their different talents, and then let them lean towards this virtual self. To be frank, what Kazama did was not uncommon. In the NBA, this kind of thing is called a template. It's just that Kazama's statement is more difficult to understand. The template is not for an existing person, but for a forward-looking pre-construction of a template based on one's own talents. This can reduce the situation where the template does not meet the requirements and leads to detours. If someone really learns the wrong way, it can be corrected in time or the template can be changed. The first step is to understand yourself. No, it should be to understand the genin who will match the model. For example, the teacher should understand Nobuko and Ichiro. If you were asked to build this tactical model for them, what would you do based on your understanding of them? In other words, in your mind, what should Ichiro and Nobuko be like in the future? After talking for a long time, I don't know if you understand it. In Fengjian's opinion, the teachers in the ninja school are very ordinary. Not only do they read from the textbook, but they also hardly touch on such thinking things. The most important thing for people is to think, rather than being carried away by instinct like animals. Only thinking can produce wisdom, but this world is cursed. Killing and fighting have become the main theme. Konoha has only been established for a few decades, and the Ninja World War has been fought 3 times. It is conceivable how much people in this world advocate violence. Chapter 47. Thinking is a very exhausting thing. The old man is old and can see it. After pondering for a while, he didn't come up with a reason and gave up decisively. For Team 6, his relationship with Fengjian's grandfather is limited to one level. If he has to add another one, it is at most the care of the senior for the junior, no more. This kind of brain-consuming thing should be left to the young people. He got up and started to light the fire and cook. This is what the old man is good at. Once people are immersed in their thoughts, they easily forget the external environment. Today, the impact on the morning was great. This kind of thinking that completely ignores the external environment has not happened for many years. However, thinking does not mean that there will be results. Most of the results of thinking are some subjective judgments made under known circumstances. The less you know and the more complicated the situation, the more difficult it is to make such a judgment. Zhao's meticulous and responsible character prevented him from lightly completing the so-called tactical model that was related to the future of the 2 students. As a result, the more he thought about it, the more confused he became, and in the end he found that he had gained nothing. It was not until Fengjian brought a bowl of fish soup to Zhejian that Zhejian, with red eyes and bulging veins on his forehead, grabbed Fengjian as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. Tell me, what should I do? I can't imagine what Ichiro and Nobuko will look like in the future. I can't even predict what Ichiro and Nobuko will look like tomorrow. They are my students. I shouldn't think about their future path now. This is the bad thing about serious people. They are prone to get stuck in something and can't get out of it. It's commonly known as being too stubborn. I know what to do, but first of all, you have to be our teacher. If you fall, our class 6 will be disbanded. In that morning, I was really worried that he wouldn't be able to get out, so I quickly pulled him back. Ah, whoever can make me fall, I will chop him to pieces with a knife. How dare you disband my class 6? After saying that, he took the bowls, tilted his head back and took a big sip, letting out a happy ah. Fengjian looked puzzled. Is the spirit of a jonin so tenacious? Isn't it said that it's hard to get out of a dead end? Isn't it said out? Could it be? Fengjian's eyes are a little wrong. Could it be that he is plotting against me? He wants my ideas but can't say them directly, so he plays this trick. The key is that I agreed to it. Fengjian instantly wants to slap himself in the face and tell you not to talk too much. After that, Fengjian was a little bored. He was being plotted against, and he still had to give advice. What kind of thing was this? For a moment, he looked at Zhao Jian with disdain, his eyes were not eyes, and his nose was not a nose. Old man Guji quickly pulled Feng Jian aside. How could his grandson treat his comrade in arms, whom he could stand by his side, like this? The old man was still very traditional. As soon as Feng Jian told the story, the old man laughed first. Didn't you want to say what you thought from the beginning? Now Zhejian is just playing a trick, and you are angry. Can you blame others? You are stupid. Besides, it concerns your two teammates, and you really hide it. Don't you still have to say it? Anyway, you have to say it, so what if Zhejian plotted against you once? He took your things, so he needs to repay them with other things. Favors are something that should be paid back in order to be close to each other. With Zhejian's personality, he must feel uneasy after plotting against you. So, don't mind it. The old man is the old man, and Feng Jian's mind was opened up by his words. The favors of a jonin were so important. The old man had known this when he had taken Kazama to visit the Inyazuka and Yamanaka clans. Now was the time for him to show his favor. Why was he being so petty? He bowed respectfully to the old man, thanked him for his guidance, and returned to the crowd in high spirits. Eating and drinking are always important things in life. Look, those people who were dying just now are full of energy after eating the old man's stew. Sitting upright in the morning, if the suggestions Feng Jian had made before were considered normal, then today's suggestion could be considered a pioneering one, requiring his full commitment and understanding. Continuing with the previous topic, you said you knew how to do it, could you please tell me in detail? Yes, in fact, all of this is not my imagination, but a conclusion drawn from my own experience. My grandfather and I have lived by the forest since we were young. There is no one to disturb us, which gives me a lot of time to think. For example, at the beginning, I just wanted to hunt some prey, because my grandfather often had to go on missions. Although he left me some living expenses, sometimes I didn't want to eat the food, so I chose to hunt like my grandfather. But I was small, so how could I catch prey? Bows and arrows, crossbows and other weapons were my best choices. In order to save effort, I even installed a winch. As he said this, he handed the small crossbow given to Kaibatter to Zayama, proving that he had indeed done so. With a small crossbow, I killed my first prey. This gave me confidence, and from then on, I began to study crossbows. When I grew up a little, I switched to bows and arrows because bows and arrows can shoot faster, but crossbows take too long to string. The time in the ninja school was not beautiful. I always felt that the fights between classmates were too fierce and the hostility was too strong. I preferred to hunt and gather freely in the forest. Until I shot and saved the one-eyed man with a bow and arrow. Standing on the tree, I could face the wolves calmly, because from the distance between the ground and the treetops, the wolves could never get close to me, and I could shoot the wolves continuously. I have found my own way to become strong, which is the bow and arrow. It does not require a lot of chakra, nor does it require complicated hand seals and chakra theory. All you need to do is pull the bow and release the arrow. The range is no worse than ninjutsu. As for the power, arrows kill people, and ninjutsu also kill people. They are both killing people, and there is no difference. After that, everything I did revolved around the way of the bow and arrow. I learned earth escape and water escape to better adapt to the terrain, confuse the enemy and escape. I invented the perception ninjutsu to find the enemy, stay away from the enemy, and increase the distance between me and the enemy. I contracted a summoned beast so that it could help me attract firepower and provide assistance when necessary. I even learned swordsmanship to make up for it, just in case I was approached by someone, I would not be completely defenseless. My imagination of my future self is that I can sense the enemy in any situation and distance myself from him. The enemy cannot get close to me, but I can kill him from a distance. I can even complete the assassination before the opponent finds me. This is how I position myself, a long-range assassination ninja. Kazama stated the goal he wanted to achieve. Zhao Jian was not surprised when he said this, because after spending a few months together, he had already figured out Kazama's behavior patterns. Now that he said this, it made him understand it even more clearly. He had to admit that Kazama's bow and arrow assassination route was feasible. He had also seen those bows and crossbows, which could definitely pose a threat to the Chunin. Moreover, Kazama was only a genin now. If he could really become a Chunin or even a jonin, his assassination would definitely be more powerful and secretive. Chapter 48. Report. After all this, you should understand. To build a tactical model, there must be a core, and this core is decided by Ichiro and Nobuko themselves. My core is the bow and arrow, your core is wind escape and swordsmanship, and the old man's core is water escape and swordsmanship and illusion. This core must be their own talent, and it must have enough growth potential. Then, around this core, combined with their personality, ideas, environment, and other conditions, a tactical model is created. After a long pause in the morning, he expressed his concerns. What if the core is wrong? How can we ensure that they will follow this model? What if they go the wrong way? This is how communication should be, instead of Kazama just talking to himself and everyone else just saying yes. What the teacher said this morning is very right. Everyone's development will be affected by a variety of factors. Therefore, this core must be the most basic thing, and it can still play a role even if the focus changes in the future. For example, you, teacher, must have focused on swordsmanship in the early stage, and when you become a chunin and a jonin, you must have focused on wind escape. But can you say that swordsmanship is useless? It is precisely because of swordsmanship that you have laid a solid foundation, so that you can develop wind escape later, right? I think I understand what you mean. The core is actually not that difficult to understand. The three ninja techniques are ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. Just start with these three aspects. Zhao Jian completely understood what Kazama meant and made his own thoughts. Yes, that's what I mean. As a ninja, no matter which path you take, these three aspects are indispensable. He left in high spirits this morning, as he had received a lot of information today and he needed to sort out his thoughts and report to the Hokage. In the office of the third Hokage, a huge crystal ball was placed on the table. The third Hokage held the crystal ball with both hands. It was unknown what he was doing, but he was smiling brightly. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The third Hokage's eyes slanted, and he was a little annoyed by being disturbed. Then his emotions disappeared, and he put the crystal ball into the drawer, and he looked like he was sitting upright and working. Please come in. Hokage, please take a look at this report. In the morning, he simply organized the content discussed in the morning, wrote a report, and reported it to the third generation. Well, the sixth team should be resting today. Wasn't the mission report delivered yesterday? Why is there another report? Sandai muttered, but still took the report and started reading it. As he read the report, Sandai frowned, and after he finished reading the entire report, he lit his pipe and took a deep puff. Was this method proposed by Feng Jian? What do you think? After pondering for a long time, the third generation asked. It's a good idea, and it's possible to realize it, but this method is not suitable for geniuses or ninjas with family heritage, because they have the conditions and vision to see their future. Even if they can't, their elders will plan for them. It's only suitable for ordinary ninjas like Ichiro and Nobuko who have no heritage and ordinary talents. Only they, lacking guidance, will be confused like this. At this time, Zayajian had long since returned to his usual calmness and composure, neither arrogant nor impatient. He was not at all unreliable when he was with Fukuma. Yes, when he was with Feng Jian, he showed limited wisdom and intelligence. He was more like a teacher who had experienced many battles, but his theoretical level was not high and his speech was clumsy. This image was his disguise, especially after Feng Jian showed good wisdom. If the teacher did not show some weakness, how could the students express themselves? If he showed that he could do everything, although it could enhance the majesty of his teacher status, it would easily limit the students' thinking. He was indeed experienced, but he was not a fool. It has to be said that those who can become elite jonin are either perverts or extremely shrewd people. The only person who cannot become one is a fool. Yes, it is indeed a very constructive suggestion. The third generation gave his own evaluation. He could see the value of this report, but he also knew that it would be difficult to implement it. Just like the medical ninja system proposed by Tsunade, because Konoha does not have so many people to do this now. There are dozens or even hundreds of genin graduating from Konoha village every year. Excluding those who died, there are many who are born. If they can be trained, they are likely to go further. Even if they are only promoted to chunin, it is a great improvement. However, to complete this step, at least a jonin level and experienced people are needed to lead the class. The tactical model, tactical guidance, and even the subsequent tactical system proposed by Kazama are very challenging for the jonin. At least in his opinion, the number of jonin with such creative thinking can be counted on one hand. Many jonin are actually quite capable, but when it comes to leading students, they are not as good as the teachers in the school, at least they have rich theoretical knowledge. If you let them lead students, unless the students themselves have that talent, it is very likely that they will ruin the students. I understand it myself, but I can't express it accurately. I am talking about people like Zayajian Bayun. People like them are not suitable for leading students. Fortunately, with the appearance of Maraboshi Kazama, Zayajian was able to put aside his face and listen to the advice of his students, which led to the current situation. How about this, you first implement it in your 6th class and see the results. If it works, we will gradually promote it. The 3rd generation concluded. The matter was settled. Zayama left and the 3rd generation fell into deep thought. From this report, it can be seen that Kazama has a lot of creative ideas and is very suitable for teaching newcomers. After he becomes a chunin, let him and Zayama lead the class together, and then find a few jonin to promote it. This theory can be promoted silently. Compared with a big fanfare, the audience may be much smaller, but at least it will not be shelved. As long as a few chunins or even jonins appear among these trained genin, it will be a great gain. In the treehouse, Kazama was teaching Ichiro how to use a stick. This was a decision Kazama made after thinking for a long time. First of all, Kazama knew how to use a stick. When he was in the University Martial Arts Club, there were only 4 weapons to choose from: sword, spear, and stick. Kazama chose sword and stick because he only used a stick for a month and a sword for a year and a spear for a lifetime. The sword and stick were relatively simple. He learned 2 sets of sword. Stick was also a performance stick. This was the reason why Kazama was afraid that this fancy trick would teach Ichiro wrong. But seeing Ichiro's extremely stiff stick play, he decided to teach him. At least the basic skills should not be wrong. He could just treat it as familiarizing himself with the basic techniques. Ichiro, stick techniques refer to the basic stick techniques, or basic stick movements, that are formed under the guidance and constraints of stick theory, based on the principles of chopping, swinging, stabbing, and lifting. Stick techniques contain a lot of content, including chopping, swinging, stabbing, lifting, hanging, collapsing, tapping, sweeping, piercing, blocking, picking, framing, supporting, clouding, lifting, smashing, and dancing, etc. I will use them one by one, you watch. Kazama slowed down the movements of a set of basic stick techniques, and Ichiro followed suit to learn. These are the basic movements of the stick method. There is no advanced move. They are all made up of these basic movements, so you must practice until you can do it at will, both offensively and defensively. Zinza looked at him with envy, because she was reading the confiscated sword fighting secret book and was in urgent need of guidance on how to master sword fighting. However, her teacher left in the morning and has not returned since then. Chapter 49. The next morning, familiar people and familiar scenes reappeared. Kazama was pulled out of bed by his 2 companions. Seeing Kazama's lazy appearance, the ambitious Nobuko was furious. She worked hard to study yesterday, and all her envy and hatred for Ichiro's guidance were directed at Kazama. After 12 years in this world, Kazama finally experienced how difficult it is to deal with a woman in the Naruto world when she loses her temper. I envy Ichiro, this dull guy. After watching the joke for a while, he can still continue to practice stick techniques with great enthusiasm. The iron stick makes a humming sound when it breaks through the air, which looks very exciting. Feng Jian deeply suspects that this guy is afraid that Nobuko's anger will be vented on him, so he deliberately stays away. After all, he has been with Nobuko for much longer than himself, and he must have seen what kind of temper Nobuko has. This iron idiot is very good at seeking benefits and avoiding harm. Hey, good morning, everyone. The smiling morning teleportation technique appeared and greeted. Teacher, you are here. These 2 sentences contain the sadness that Feng Jian felt after being bombarded with words for the whole morning. Okay, Nobuko, don't lose your temper. I'll teach you swordsmanship later. You don't need to learn anything new now. You haven't even mastered the moves of the Hiten-Yujian style. What you need now is to improve your physical fitness, otherwise it will be difficult for you to exert the power of the sword drawing technique. Yes. With the guidance in the morning, Nobuko immediately gave up bombarding Kazama, and Kazama was able to calm down. Are all girls so difficult to mess with? I curled my lips in the morning and said, how can I answer you, you straight man? Let's put Nobuko's matter aside for now, as we urgently need yesterday's discussion. I understand the tactical model, but how to implement it on Ichiro and Nobuko, I need specific steps. Zhao Jin has always been meticulous in his work. Since the Hokage needs their Team 6 to implement this theory, he must understand the key points in it. Again, understand them. Let's talk about Ichiro first. Ichiro is physically strong and has good strength. He has a natural advantage in physical skills. The reason why he is not showing obvious performance now is because Ichiro lacks physical skills and flexible application. Until now, he still uses the straightforward set of skills he learned in school. In addition to his current stick skills, I think he should have a lot of room for improvement in physical skills and stick skills. This is determined by his natural advantages. Secondly, in terms of ninjutsu, his earth escape talent can be tried. As for the others, it still needs to be tested with chakra test paper. It is hard to say for the time being. As for illusions, the two looked at Ichiro, who was sweating profusely, and shook their heads at the same time. It was obvious that he had no talent for illusions. We can only do some targeted practice on illusion resistance and illusion removal. Zaojian nodded. Looking at it this way, Feng Jian's analysis was very reasonable. What about your tactical model? In your words, Ichiro, in your mind, what will the future Ichiro look like? In my mind, Ichiro, for now, should be a strong offensive ninja who is fierce in close combat, proficient in earth escape, and good at frontal combat. Oh, he has both long-range and short-range combat, and is good at both ninjutsu and taijutsu. He is indeed a jonin. It seems that you have high expectations for Ichiro. Zaojian agreed with Feng Jian's analysis and even had some ideas. For example, taijutsu, who is the best taijutsu in Konoha? Might Guy, let Ichiro practice taijutsu and stick techniques. Akimichi Choza has a good relationship with me, and it shouldn't be difficult to just give some pointers on stick techniques. As for ninjutsu, although I don't practice earth escape, which jonin doesn't have some collection. There may not be many advanced earth escapes, but there are still a few low-level earth escapes. If it doesn't work, I can still ask the Hokage. After all, this can be regarded as training talents for Konoha. What about Zinzi? Asked Zaojian. Nobuko is the key. Ichiro's strengths and weaknesses are clear at a glance. As long as you understand him, his path can basically be determined. Nobuko is the most troublesome. Judging from what she says now, she is very interested in swordsmanship, but her physical fitness cannot keep up, and she has not shown any talent in ninjutsu. Of course, this is related to your lack of teaching, as well as illusion. In short, Nobuko has not shown very obvious talent so far. Therefore, determining talent is actually the most difficult step. No matter how difficult it is, we have to do it. Let's test their chakra properties first. We have promised them this a long time ago. Zhao Jian was not at all anxious because Feng Jian did not tell him about Nobuko's characteristics. Instead, he patted Feng Jian on the shoulder and took out the chakra test paper he had prepared long ago. Come here, both of you, and test your chakra. Wow, is this a chakra test paper? It's very ordinary, just like a sticky note. This is made from a plant that is very sensitive to chakra. It will react differently depending on the attributes of the chakra. Wind attribute is cracking, lightning attribute is wrinkling, fire attribute is burning, water attribute is moistening, and earth attribute is breaking. Each person gets one, inject chakra into it, and see how the chakra test paper reacts. Then you can tell the chakra attribute of the sound you are listening to. Each of the three took one, but all eyes turned to Kazama. What are you looking at? I haven't used it either. Isn't it okay to try it out of curiosity? Kazama rolled his eyes and explained. In fact, Kazama already knew the properties of his chakra, but there were 3 of them in a class and no one knew it. Why should he take the lead in doing this? To show off your ability, your wealth, and your baggage? He wasn't familiar with them enough and would easily make others hate him. As the chakra was injected, the chakra test paper suddenly reacted, first splitting into 2, then the 2 separated pieces, one shattered into slag, and the other moistened into mud. It was quick and neat, without any surprises. Wind, water, earth, Feng Jian is actually born with these 3 attributes, not bad. Facing a wave of envy from his companions, would Feng Jian explain that he spent several years developing the wind attribute? No, showing his talent appropriately is more beneficial to his position in the team, so he doesn't explain. Ichiro, you do it. With Kazama's example, everyone knew what to do. The chakra paper in Ichiro's hand broke into pieces little by little as the chakra was injected, until it was completely broken, without any other signs. Ichiro, your attribute is a single earth attribute. Ichiro touched the back of his head and smiled. He didn't show any bad emotions. He wasn't unhappy, but just happy about knowing his talent. Ichiro's personality is really likable. He doesn't fight or compete. He is honest, simple, calm, and tenacious. He doesn't have so many bad emotions, and he won't disturb others. The most feared thing in the team is to meet the kind of people who are always angry and resentful when encountering things, and take their anger out on others. Nobuko, come here. Nobuko did the same thing. The chakra test paper gradually became moist and suddenly caught fire, which scared Nobuko. Haha, Zinza has both water and fire attributes, dual attributes, very good. Zhao Jian said with a smile, but he exchanged a glance with Feng Jian, and they both saw worry in each other's eyes. In short, although Nobuko has dual attributes, neither of the two attributes is suitable for swordsmanship. In addition, Nobuko's chakra is not outstanding based on the current performance, and the root of the ninjutsu turret is not suitable. Nobuko's tactical model still cannot be figured out. Chapter 50. Ichiro, continue to practice your stick techniques. You must practice what I taught you today until you are completely familiar with it. Okay. Ichiro replied seriously, and returned to his original position excitedly, continuing to struggle with the iron rod. Nobuko was originally happy in his heart, but he could obviously see that Kazama and Hayabusa were full of worries after testing the chakra properties of the two. Is it because Ichiro and I have very different chakra attributes? The thoughtful young girl asked her question carefully. She was afraid of hearing a disappointing answer, but was curious about the dilemma of the two people in front of her. You are born with two types of chakra, so it's not a difference. If you are not good, what will happen to Ichiro? Don't think too much. After a pause, Feng Jian thought it was better not to hide it from Nobuko. No matter how much they thought about it, it was not as good as Nobuko's thoughts. After a pause, he continued to ask, Nobuko, do you like fire jutsu or water jutsu? I like them all. Fire escape is the most powerful of the 5 attributes, and ninjutsu tends to be medium and long range, plus it's extremely powerful, so many people take this attribute as their primary attribute. Water escape is indeed the weakest, and if you want water escape to be powerful, you must increase the injection of chakra. So, I'm asking you very seriously now, will you choose fire escape or water escape? Don't think it doesn't matter, it's related to your choice of ninjutsu in the early stages. For example, I learned wind escape first, but I've never learned any ninjutsu, instead I learned water escape and earth escape. The original intention was to advise Nobuko to make a serious choice, but Nobuko became more and more confused the more he listened. He didn't hear any preference from it, it was different from the advice he thought. After I learn water jutsu, can I not learn fire jutsu? Or should I learn fire jutsu first and then I can't learn water jutsu? Ah, of course you can learn it, but human energy is limited. We hope you choose a major so that you can better exert your power. What do you want me to choose? Nobuko, this is your life choice. We can't make the decision for you. You have to make the choice yourself. And you have to bear the consequences yourself. Then I choose to learn both. This is my decision. Listen to me, your time is limited. Before you become a chunin, it's good enough if you can master one type of ninjutsu. More. You don't agree with my choice, but you still want me to make a decision. Then, isn't the choice I make still the one you asked me to make? Is it still my choice? Why don't you just tell me openly what I should choose? Zinza said angrily with a fierce face. After Nobuko said this, Zaojian and Fengjian were silent. Nobuko was right. If we want to give Nobuko the right to choose freely, then we should respect her decision. If we want to interfere, we should say it openly, and don't use the slogan of I won't interfere with you, but you still have to choose according to my rules. Unconsciously, Feng Jian felt like some disgusting parents who said they were doing it for your own good, but in fact they were satisfying their own hobbies. Okay, well said, Nobuko, I do have an idea, and I've thought about it for a long time. It's about the positioning of the 3 of us. Feng Jian decided to tell it all. They were all his teammates, and would be partners in life and death in the future. If he had anything to say, he should say it face to face. The more he thought about it, the more likely he would make things worse. We are not smart people, so the clearer he said it, the better. Go ahead Kazama, Ichiro, come here, I have something to say. Teacher, you also have to sit in, and I need you to give your opinion from a bystander's perspective. Feng Jian said to Zaojian. Okay, it seems you have new ideas. I'm looking forward to it. Zhao Jian put one hand in his pocket with a relaxed expression. As long as Feng Jian started working, it would be easy for him as a teacher. He just had to act as a supervisor with his eyes and brain. After Ichiro sat down, Feng Jian also sorted out his thoughts. From the moment we formed a team, I knew that the talents of the three of us were not enough to support us to go too far. But since we have become a team, I hope that our team can reach the top of the ninja world, or even the top. So what should we do? Talent is something that is destined by nature, and hard work can only make up for part of it. Fortunately, there is a ready-made example in our village. That is Inoshikacho. I think Mr. Zaojian should know it very well. Zhao Jian nodded, stroking his chin and explaining to the two new students, the so-called pig, deer, and butterfly refers to an alliance formed by the Yamanaka family, the Nara family and the Akimichi family. The three families have always advanced and retreated together, and cooperated tacitly. Moreover, the abilities of the three families can make up for each other's shortcomings, forming a battle formation similar to a battle formation, which is called the pig, deer, and butterfly formation. Yes, my idea is similar to that of pig, deer, and butterfly. Since our individual talents and abilities are not strong enough, we should unite, play to our strengths, enhance our tacit understanding, and form a formation similar to pig, deer, and butterfly to achieve the effect of 1 + 1 2. As far as I know, any one of the three members of pig, deer, and butterfly is not outstanding, and even has great flaws. However, when the three are combined together, they will exert the strongest strength, so why can't we give it a try? Besides, I think our abilities are very suitable. Ichiro's stick skills and earth escape techniques may seem unremarkable, but they are actually the most suitable for frontal combat and defense. And Nobuko's speed and sword skills are the most suitable for fast forward and fast retreat guerrilla warfare. Adding my long-range output, the only thing missing now is one thing. We three need a point to combine the three of us. This person must be the one to control the situation. This person is from the Nara family, because they have the best brains. Of the three of us, I can command, but my ability is not suitable. My archery skills mean that I have to stay away from the enemy to exert my power, and I can't accurately control the situation. So Ichiro and Nobuko are the most suitable. If you learn water escape, you can become the person who controls the situation in the team, which will greatly enhance the power of our tactics. Besides, I happen to know a water escape technique that is very suitable for controlling the situation. Feng Jian smiled sinisterly. Water escape technique. Water Yuna Yuan. Feng Jian originally learned this technique to control the situation, but he found that the attack distance of this technique was very limited and it did not match his archery as well as he had imagined, so he gave up on it. He even did not practice water Yuna Yuan carefully, and now when he used it, it was just a show. This is it. As a Jonin, Zaojian recognized this jutsu at a glance. The special water escape technique created by the gatekeepers while eating caramel is indeed very suitable for controlling the situation. Ichiro also widened his eyes and quickly moved away from the pool of liquid on the ground. During the physical duel, this stuff made him very uncomfortable. Nobuko had only seen it once before, when Ichiro and Kazama were fighting for the first time, and she thought it was just a water escape technique. Seeing it up close now is still very strange. You can touch it and feel it.